Namaskar and welcome to our event this afternoon. To all our audiences from UK, from Europe, from North America, and from India, you're at various times in the time zone, but welcome to this very special event. We are all here to pay an online tribute event to the legendary Soumitra Chatterjee. Soumitra has been a colossus across the map, the cultural map of Bengal. He's also been acknowledged nationally, and he's been an appreciated and wonderfully appreciated artist internationally. It's been an extraordinary career with his films, with his theater, and his writing, his poetry, his painting. In every way, he has been a polymath. And many people have been saying over the last few days and weeks that he has been one of the last polymaths in Bengal. We are all here today to talk about his work, to discuss many aspects of this extraordinary artist. But before that, I'd just like to introduce ourselves. I'm Sangeeta Datta. I'm artistic director of Baithak. Baithak is a not-for-profit arts organization based here in London. We've been working for the last 14 years. We're working basically to create a platform where we celebrate the legacy of Asian arts, of Indian arts, and also bringing this work to our new generation here. As my children grew up in this country, we found it really, really important to tell them and to remind them and to show them what extraordinary legacy we have of art and culture from where we have come here to the diaspora. And this is the work that Baithak has been engaged in. We've had extraordinary, legendary figures working with us to do master classes, to do a lot of online and theatrical events on stage. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that we have discovered new talent and we have taken them literally from the community halls to the largest venues here in London, to South Bank, to the Royal Festival Hall, to Queen, to the Albert Hall, and to many other large venues in the UK. We've also traveled in Europe. We've toured in Europe. We've toured in India. And this year, live events haven't been possible, but we've been delivering a whole range of Connect digital arts events where we've had music, we've had conversations, and really very, very inspiring experiences that our audiences have had. So a very warm welcome from Baithak. And over to Anirban, who is going to tell you about Indian Essex.
Thank you so much, Tripathi, and a warm welcome to all our viewers all over the world, viewers who have joined from India, from UK, from US, pretty much from Australia as well. And thank you for being with us. Obviously, Baithak UK is doing a phenomenal job in the UK in terms of culture and spreading that to Generation Next. Similarly, Essex Indians, you have seen in the video, our main objectives are to maintain these roots and values in ourselves and also in the generation next, and also the diaspora, which we are very proud of, our own treasure in India, which we are planning, obviously, we are maintaining it and we're trying to pass on to the generation next. In this difficult time, the COVID-19 2020, we are continuing this with the virtual platform via the StreamYard. And we have done 30 virtual concerts from the tributes to celebration of life, and also the main festivals like Diwali, the Uttoshuri, which is for the generation next, East meets West, as you've seen. And we are continuing our support, the humanitarian support for the medical fraternity in the hospitals and for the healthcare. So as Sangeeta already told you, today is very special for us, both emotionally and culturally. Soumitra Chatterjee, celebration of life. We are here to celebrate a life well lived, and from the basics, from the grammar of acting and performing, like the poise, the pronunciation, the emotions, the expressions. Globally, I think Soumitra is on the top. It's not just Bengal, not just India. You compare it, he hasn't traveled to Bollywood or Hollywood, but to us Bengalis, he's no less than any top Bollywood actor or a Hollywood actor. So we are here to celebrate Soumitra Chatterjee's life with a plethora of legendary artists from all fields, as Shongitadi said, polymath. So it's not just acting, it's playwright, it's drama, it's literary works, everything. So let's enjoy a glimpse of Soumitra's works. And we are really grateful to Sangbad Pratidin for our collaboration, for collaborating with us.
টেলিপ্যাথির জোর আছে, আমরা ঠিক রাস্তায় এসেছি, তাই আমাদের যাত্রা পণ্ড করবার জন্য এই ব্যবস্থা। আমার আর একটা অস্ত্র আছে, সেটা চোখে দেখা যায় না। কি? মগজাস্ত্র। সেটা এইখানে থাকে। সমস্ত জীবনটা যেন একটা ছন্দের মতো, জন্ম মৃত্যু, দিন রাত্রি, সুখ দুঃখ, মিলন বিচ্ছেদ। হীরার খনির জোরে টাকা করেছে, খনিতে যা হীরা ওঠে সব রাজকোষে চলে যায়, আর খনির মজুদদের সেখানে চাবুক মেরে কাজ করে। গরিব মানুষ সেখানে না খেয়ে থাকে। যারা বাদশাদের তাদের জাদু করে বশ করে। সারে বাঙালি। আপনার বয়স? মেলা জ্বালা। আরে আমি তো আমার ভাইপোর কথা বলছিলাম। ভাইপোর নাম? নামটি অতি সুললিত, শ্যাম সুন্দর ঘোষ। What a funny name. কেন ফানি কেন? অবিশ্বাস্য। অশোক গুপ্ত জিন্দাবাদ। আমি একা নই মায়া, আমি একা নই।
এই বয়সে একাকিত্ব জিনিসটা বড় ভয়ঙ্কর। ওখানে আমার সঙ্গে তো ঝগড়া করারও কেউ ছিল না। গোপন বলতে নিজের কাছে একটা নাম রাখবো শুধু, একটা নাম রাখবো শুধু। পিতা নয়, লেখক নয়, স্বার্থ নয়, শুধু বন্ধু। চললাম পুলু, জানাবো তোকে কি দেখলাম ছেঁড়া পাতায়। ভালো থাকিস, ইতি অপু। অপূর্ব রায়।
It's quite extraordinary that we are here talking about an artist who inspired not one or two generations, but actually three generations of audiences. So the admiration that my parents' generation felt, the romance of Apu and Aparna in Apur Shankshar, which really was a representative romance and of the changing times in Bengal when the film opened. Then our generation, where we grew up on the Satyajit Ray films and crossed over to the next generation, where we enjoyed Shonar Kella, Feluda, and the later films. So it's really an extraordinary spanning of 6 decades of wonderful work. We're going to start at the top. We're very privileged to have very distinguished guests with us. And I would, at the top, like to introduce the ever gracious Sharmila Tagore, who has been with us on the Baithak journey on many events. I've also had the good fortune of having Sharmila Di and Soumitra Da share the stage with us when we presented Gitanjali 100 at Calcutta Club, where an extraordinary 4,000 people watched and tripped over into the lawns and into the tennis lawns. It was an absolute riot and a physical way of really understanding how much of the collective consciousness of Bengalis the Soumitra Sharmila presence is. Whether you recall Apu and Aparna from the film or whether it is the later films, they have been a partnership through the many decades. So we start with a little introduction, a visual introduction to Sharmila, Soumitra, and then we will bring in Sharmila Di.
আমি বলবো যে টিউশনিটা আছে সেটাও ছেড়ে দাও। তারপর আমার গরিব বর সন্ধ্যের আগেই বাড়ি ফিরে আসবে। আর আমার কোনো অনুশোচনা থাকবে না।
Welcome, Sharmila Di. Thank you for being here with us today. I know over the last 3 weeks you've been on many, many events and shows talking about Soumitra Da, but indeed there is no end to discovering and talking about the many faceted artist Soumitra Da. I'd like to start with the journey, and right at the top, when you were cast as Aparna, you were a schoolgirl, you were very young, and Soumitra Da was 10 years older. He was 23 when he played the part of Apu. With this sort of a large age difference and you being in your early teens, how did y'all create a rapport, a bond?
First, I just like to thank both of you, Anirban and you, for organizing this wonderful occasion. And thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to participate. As you know, Soumitra is so dear to me. And since the 15th, there has been outpouring of, celebration, no longer grief. I mean, people are paying tribute to him in any way they can. So it is really, really, it's a wonderful experience. It's like living with him for a little while longer, and one feels so greedy. You know, one doesn't want to let go. When you used to sing, when you used to recite He Bondhu Biday, and we would think that Jete Nahi Debo. But you know, you can't stop time. And but I don't think he's gone. I think he's with us. And when I saw that clip just now, from Apur Shankshar, which was when 60 years ago. Yes, because that was his
more than, yeah.
I know film also. Can you imagine so many years ago? But the scene remains so vivid in my memory. And that was such a beautiful scene. And then there was another scene, if you remember, when he's playing the flute and then he comes and sits on the threshold and then talking about his book,
Yeah.
and then he says, "Tomaki utsargo korbo." And Aparna says, "Kishargo," meaning I don't understand these polysyllabic words. And then he says, "To my wife." And he's been teaching her English. So she says very enthusiastically, "Wife mane jani." And he says, "Tumi jano na." He looks at her and says, "Tumi jano na, ami jani."
Absolutely.
And that says so much, so much. And that iconic scene in the Tonga, when after seeing that film, they're coming back, and I allow him to have a cigarette. In fact, I liked his cigarette. And he looks at me again dreamily, as only Soumitra can, Soumitra could,
Yeah.
the ultimate in romantic image. And he says, "Tomar chokhe ki aach se bolo to?" And I say, "Kajol." It is, just lit by that match light. It's those moments in Okusham Shad. And I think, as Shomita said, I was 13 and he was 23, and I was really a schoolgirl. And just one day I wore a frock and came to the set, and Manika said, "Please go away because you're ruining my image of Aparna." But for me, everybody became Kaku, Jechu, Mama, Omuk Tomuk. But Soumitra was always Soumitra. He was a pal. And he was so affectionate to me because I was so much younger. So, and that journey together, that common place where we started and created an early bond because of all those sensibilities that we were enacting, all those beautiful dialogues we were saying. So I think because of that, there was that connection. And that friendship has always endured. So I'm so grateful that he was in my life, Manika was in my life. Otherwise, my life wouldn't be what it is today. After that, there was, he's worked in so many films, like 350 plus films. Out of that, perhaps only 14 were Manikda's films. I remember another beautiful film called Bornali because, after a while I just went away, finished my school, then came back professionally. My first film was with Uttam Babu and Sheshankar. And soon after, I worked in Bornali by Ajay Kaur, beautifully written, beautifully directed. And Soumitra looked so handsome. He was so good looking with that white dhuti Punjabi in that black and white format. He looked lovely, and there was a touch of nobility, you
Yes.
know, and has always been there, I think. And of course his
That was
language.
with the O as well, isn't it? Opu Aparna and that Oshish Aloka. That was
Yes,
the
yes, and then
like
that it's a one evening story because
yeah.
he delivers a invitation to a wrong address, and then
Yes.
he realizes to his horror that this girl, because he goes through her books and realizes that this girl is in love with the man who's about to be married to another person.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Vishwanath.
want to. He doesn't want her to go through that that shock. So he wants to take her away somewhere. So he tries this, that, and the other to keep her away from the wedding venue.
Yeah.
And it's so beautifully written again, and the interaction between the two. I mean, he looked gorgeous, and I was full of pimples, but still, there was still,
Yeah.
it was innocence of that time, and that
Yeah.
again perhaps the uh, Sharmila, that kind of charisma. So that was there. And then again, I went off to Bombay and came back to work in Oronet Ratri.
Mm.
Yeah.
Played a very different character there. He was a very complex and uptight sort of a person, as P.G. Woodhouse would have said that he's a very well balanced person, but he's got a chip on both his shoulders. And through me, through the character, through Aparna, he finds his humanity, and so again I play the conscience and totally not judgmental. Again, the scenes were so beautifully written, and there is one particular scene right at the end when Aparna says, I'm going away, and he wants to keep in touch. So he said, why don't you give me your telephone number? So she writes it on a 5 rupee note and gives it to
Yes.
him. Because before that, at the fair, she had bought something and he had paid 5 rupees for that. So, she returns the money as well as keeps the avenue of opportunity to meet again that open. So, so subtle, so understated. So we worked in this. BB was, of course, I mean, cannot be discussed now because it will take 40 minutes just to talk about it. So, and then Abar Arunni, which was Gautam's tribute to Manikda. So he got all of us, and Shomit, who was so ill with
at that time.
advanced cancer, and he said, "No, I'm not going to miss out on this film. I want to be part." So that was the feeling that Navratri gang, out of which so many people have gone, and now Shomit also, Ravina, so many.
Absolutely.
But that gang was diminished in then after that Shomit and Soumitra now. So that there, I mean, again, we shared a Dak bungalow, Shubhendu, Soumitra and I, and then we swapped furniture. And Shubhendu said, no, you can't take everything. I said, yes, I can. I want my dressing table. So, it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And Shubhendu would be singing uh, outside after his morning walk, doing his exercise at the same time. In fact, he taught me so many good things for my back, which I still do. Uh, and Shubhendu would be ordering breakfast or something. And, and I would be still in bed sipping coffee and listening to this ambient sound and feeling so happy that I'm with guys, who are such wonderful guys and give me so much. Because in the evening, when we would come back from work, we would have these long addas where, one person would start, Shubhendu would start, and Soumitra would stop, and Soumitra would, it would just carry on from Ohendu to Girish Ghosh to, sorry, all about theatre and so many things. And in between some juicy gossip as well. And
Yeah.
it was, I just felt that I wish I had recorded that because it was uh, wonderful. So, his beginning was with Shishi Bhaguri, then he came to Manikda. He was a committed uh, actor. He knew that what he wanted while I was a schoolgirl. I really didn't know what I wanted at that time. Many years later, I still didn't know. But he knew and he worked on his language. In Charulata, I mean, I didn't even know there was a pre-Tagorean handwriting. And Manika wanted him to do that because earlier, obviously, there was no word processor, there was no, so handwriting, everything was, written. And he was uh, so committed and so, uh, what is the word, like involved in the filmmaking process that he practiced that handwriting. So, on the set, he was so focused, so wonderful, uh, so easy to work with. And off the set, he was, like I said, you know, uh, and then I mean, there was no stardom in him. In fact, many people compared to, because he had like a lot of people say that people who work with Manikda cannot grow because Manikda's personality doesn't allow that. But Soumitra's career flourished. He was a parallel, person to Manikda, if I may say so. His accomplishments and his. But so a lot of people said, well, he's not a star like Uttam Kumar. So I don't understand what this stardom means. Ultimately, we are here to act. We are actors, and
Of course.
that's exactly how can an actor be shut away from real life? How can you just maintain this mystery around you and become a star? And you know, uh, so he
Yeah.
wasn't like that. He would do his own bazaar. He would uh, go to the bank. He would meet people, uh, and like you said, that he was everybody's bondhu. You know, as Kajal says,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
became,
Okay.
I mean, Bondhu, and he became everybody's Bondhu because everybody, all Bengali cinema lovers at some point, had this deep connection with him. He felt that he belonged to that particular me. He was mine. And there was so much to learn from him, of course. I mean, you felt
Yeah.
after seeing his film that you were a somewhat better person. So, and of
Absolutely.
course, on the 15th of November, the kind of farewell Kolkata gave, because that was his chosen city, with flowers, with poetry, with songs, and also a lot of eloquent silence. And you could sense the loss, the grief that everybody was feeling, and yet they were celebrating him. They knew that his legacy will continue to live on
Yeah.
and enrich generations, because they knew that they lost something very, very special. But it's there. His recitations are there, his films are there, his books are there, his poetry is there. I remember during Abar Arun, he would take out these little chits, pieces
Mhm.
of paper, and he'd written some poetry to his grandchildren. So that I said, yes, very good, that is grandchildren. So he
Of
would
course.
do that and keep it in his pocket. So while he was working, his mind was always working. He was stretching his boundary. He was always engaged, and the courageous and ethical stance he took when he had to on occasions. So there was so many aspects to him, and as a friend, I feel um, like he said, after Manikda went, and then Topin Sinha was another very close friend of his. He really looked forward to meeting him. And who do I talk to now? So, although Chico and I lived in two different cities and often didn't call each other, but there was that bond. Our friendship never eroded. In fact, on my 75th birthday, which was last year, and my birthday is tomorrow, 78, and he was very ill. And a friend of mine was making a film. And Soumitra said, you have to wait for me. I do not want to miss Rinku's special birthday.
But
So, and those words now are with me, and I will cherish everything. So, what can I say? I mean, I'm sure after me there are many uh, educated and they know the words and they know so much about Shobhito and his diverse talent. So they will tell you. I don't want to take too long, but I just want to say that how much we miss him, but how much we celebrate him, and how much we'll continue to celebrate him, and thank him for leaving so much for us that we can always see and enjoy and
absolutely.
love and cherish.
Absolutely. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharmila. I remembered your words in Aranya Dindra in Abar Aranye when Soumitra said, "Ajke robita thakle খুব ভালো হতো," and you
Ah,
said, "মানুষ চলে গেলে কি থাকে না?" So that is the
see,
thing. Exactly that's type of, and that I think we all need to remember. মানুষ
yes.
সবসময় থাকে, এরকম একজন life will be always
I
there.
got a second innings because somebody, to Soumitra Mitro, asked me to do poetry, sort of
Reading.
recitation with Soumitra. At first, I said, no, no, I can't do that possibly. But he convinced me, and I did it. And that excitement of that house full, and then listening to Soumitra's voice kind of close, it was lovely, and it became very popular. So we did that in Dhaka, in Kolkata, of course. And then there was another dear friend of Soumitra, Dr. Amit Vishwas and
আমি
Karoli.
রঞ্জন বিশ্বাস, হ্যাঁ।
Yes, and he worked in Bridge with them, which Gautam's daughter, I think, plays there. And so in Ketuni, we performed together. And I must tell you something quickly. Shubhita is looking that very worried. That sort of,
No, not at all.
When we went to Dhaka, for some reason, Soumitra mixed up all the script, and he couldn't find what he had to say after I finished my poetry. And for about good 5-6 minutes, he was fumbling, completely oblivious that there's an audience there. They loved him so much, it was pin drop silence. And then when he found it and then he said it, and there was much appreciation. So he had, a following in both the Bengals. He was so popular in Dhaka, and
Bangladesh.
it was so heartwarming to see that.
Yeah, I want to extend that love for Bangla and love for Soumitra, which is not just in the two Bengals, but today I think we really especially need to recognize the space that he had with the diaspora audiences. And he would quite often, as you would, be at the Bongo conferences in North America. Both of you have done work here with us in London. So there's been this global, not just recognition, but admiration and a great privilege to have you all really amongst us, because this love for the language, which started with Onushochona, and it's a theme that stayed with us since childhood. Onushochona, Utsorgo, really getting into a language, and that brought a wonderful bond between you. Yeah. And every time we saw you all on stage, it was like Opu and Aparna are growing older together, so that sort of empathy and bond people had with you, it's extraordinary.
Because that pair has remained in everybody's, as you said, collective conscience. And it's the ultimate in romance because of the age and the youth and that sheer optimism and disregard for poverty and all those things that matter in today's world. But they didn't care about that. They had each other, and that's all they wanted. So it was, I think everybody who sees Opu Shamshad gets very moved and very, they get in touch with their own self, which they lose in the daily battles of life, climbing ladders, etc.
Yeah.
That really brings, you remember who you were and what you really wanted. And ultimately, it's only love and caring for each other and that happiness that brings caring for each other. And that's all that matters.
Thank you, Sharmila. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Really grateful. And stay safe. Bhalo thakbe. Thank you.
We'll move on after that wonderful exchange of memories from Sharmila Di. At this point, I'd like to remind all of you that this event is happening in partnership. Baithak, Essex Indians leading it, and we have the London Indian Film Festival. We have the Nehru Centre, which is the cultural wing of the High Commission of India here in the UK. We have the Wales Puja Committee. We have Birmingham Indian Film Festival. And these names will give you an idea that there are organizations across the country here in the UK who have come together to this wonderful tribute event, to do this wonderful celebration of an extraordinary artist. I'd like to at this point welcome the director of Nehru Centre, Amish Tripathi, to the panel.
Hi, how are you?
Amish. Amish doesn't really need a recognition or an introduction. He's a globally recognized and popular writer. He writes with such extraordinary speed that I keep losing track of the number of books that he's written. But today he's here with us to join this event about Soumitra. And we were talking even last evening about what an important personality he is and how nationally there could really be no end to the tributes and the memory sharings around him. So Amish, you are here, and very soon we will bring in the other wonderful artist of the afternoon, Aparna Sen, writer, director, actor. And it's again so extraordinary that Sharmila Di, who started her career at 13 and did her first film with Soumitra and Satyajit Ray, Immediately, a few years later, there's Aparna Sen, who was cast at the age of 14 in Shamapti as part of Teen Konna. And there again, she starred with Soumitra. So over to you, Amish, for your recollections or impressions about Soumitra.
Firstly, I must apologize, as I said at another memoriam for Soumitra Da, that I am not Bengali, but but I did study in Calcutta for 2 years, but I was introduced to the wonders of Bengali literature and movies through Feluda, through what had been written. So I read the books first, and then I saw the movie Shonar Kela. And I saw it in Bengali with subtitles. And in my mind, Soumitra Da was always Feluda. I know there were movies that were made earlier, and some of them were actually quite good. But in my mind, he was always the quintessential Feluda. And as I discovered more of him, he was the quintessential Bhadralok. Classy, elegant, well-read, super talented, writer, actor, director, in so many ways, truly blessed by the goddess. And he was an Indian treasure, not just a Bengali treasure. He was an Indian treasure. And so the Nehru Center is deeply honored to be a part of this celebration of his arts. And it is, of course, a moment of sadness and grief in the fact that so many are missing him. But I'm sure he would also want us to celebrate his life and his art with a smile. And I think that's what one likes about. I've seen a few programs that have been organized on him, and the thing that grabs me the most is the positivity with which people speak. That they remember him with a smile, and that's the way it should be. There is. We should celebrate the life of such a great man, such a great individual. And I didn't know him personally, I must admit, but from all that I've heard, he comes across as such a decent, warm, genuinely good human being. And
Very
yeah.
And at this point, the more you think about the work that he's left and the legacy that he's left with us, I constantly feel that his involvement with theatre and his love for theatre made him a democratic artist, which is why even at the zenith of stardom, he was not one who was going to retire with dark glasses and be in a private car. He was still the everyman on the streets, doing his morning bazaar on the streets, saying hello to his neighbors, going on his morning walks. And we've seen this, the sort of inner discipline, but also this approachability and this wonderful way of engaging with people across generations, which is why he was working right till the end of his life with younger directors, and people were writing roles for him. So it's an arc right in front of us. And I think, as you've rightly said, it's something to be not just fondly remembered, but to be celebrated.
Yeah, true. The humility with which he approached his art, with the devotion, it's worth emulating.
Yeah. So, Anirban, do we have Aparna here?
Yes, Aparna is waiting over there. Let's play this small clip for Aparna, and then Aparna will be in the stream.
Namaste, Aparna ji. How are you?
Namaskar, namaskar. I'm very well, thank you.
Absolute pleasure to see you again after so long, Aparna ji, albeit online.
Yes.
You're well in Kolkata.
Hi, Amish.
Hi. So we'll just jump straight into a question that I thought I will ask you.
Okay.
As you know, regrettably, I was not born Bengali, so I don't understand Bengali as much. And whatever I've seen, the movies I've seen is with subtitles. But I thought I'll ask you something on Shamapti, on what your
Yeah.
experience was on Teen Kanya, which was your first movie. And,
Yes.
you were acting with an actor who by that time was already quite a legend. And
Of course.
and you were young, and this was your first role. I can only imagine the butterflies in the stomach. What is it like?
Well, I was in class 8, and as I've written somewhere, the whole class was in love with Soumitra Chatterjee after seeing Opu Shongshar, and I was no exception. And as I've described once, when he was coming, we were in this huge kind of palatial, crumbling old mansion in Nimtita village where the whole unit had put up. And I was sitting in this wide river facing veranda and reading something because I didn't have work that day. And then I saw him coming. And that first sight of him, I will never in my life forget, because he was coming in a Gorur Gadi, a bullock cart with
Oh,
a kind of a shade over it. And he was looking around, and I just saw Opu coming. I mean, this Opu that we were all in love with,
Yeah, exactly.
so much in love with. And I was so excited, and I was so sort of, very awkward and very shy at this age and trying to feel invisible almost, that I ducked. And then in the evening we were introduced formally, and he was so good looking. I mean, he looked, it was just frightening. He was so good looking. And I just wanted to disappear. I wanted to disappear because I felt awkward and shy and like an ugly duckling, and really felt very, very awkward. But he did pay too much attention to me. I mean, he styled himself Kaka because I, being the youngest in the unit at 14, almost one of the youngest, except that little boy Rakhal. I used to call everybody, Kaka, most of them Kaka. So he styled himself Kaka, which means uncle.
yeah.
And my mouth fell open, and I was so disappointed. I said, God, he's made himself my Kaka now. And it's terrible. It was awful. I felt very, very, very disappointed. And then, I later on, when we started acting together, I still called him Kaka for the longest time,
Oh, wow.
until we have two versions here. His memory and my memory differ. He says that that it was at my request that I requested him to stop, that I should stop calling him Kaka. And I remember that he said one day, "How much longer are you going to call me Kaka?" So our memories differ over here. But whatever it be, it was, finally the Kaka was dropped, and he just became Soumitra. In fact, he had said to me that, Soumitra, because he's about 11 years older than me. And he said, Soumitra, you can call me Dada at least. So I said, no, nobody can. By that time, I was a little more confident. And I said, nobody can become a Dada from a Kaka. Either it's Kaka or it's the Christian name. So he became Soumitra, and he remained Soumitra for, until the day he died. Yes.
Sangeeta, if you have any.
Yes. Aparna, first of all, thank you for joining from Shantiniketan. Aparna has
Yes, I'm
already
glad
said.
that the internet is working. Yes.
Yes.
Working very well.
Thank you. And you've already sent us a pre-recorded statement with lovely poetry, which we will play at the end. But just to continue from Amish's question, you then carried on to become a very popular romantic pair with him. And there were so many
Yes.
romantic comedies, sort of rom-coms that you did with him. And
Yeah.
how did this friendship or equation with him grow as you continued to work and you grew yourself?
Well, we used to, one of the pleasures was that we used to discuss a lot of books. And we used to discuss, Sharat Chandra and Bankim Chandra, and how even though Bankim Chandra was the better writer, his pen was stronger, but he was much more reactionary than Sharat Chandra, who was very much more of a liberal. These are the kinds of things that we used to discuss at the time. And even right till the end, until we made Boshu Poribar and Bohoman together. Even during Boshu Poribar, I remember there was a huge, large marble dining table, and we used to all sit there. And we were still discussing Jibananand Das, who was one of his favorite poets, and mine too. So, and we've done a lot of recitations together, and we used to keep discussing about Jibanananda's prose, which is not that much discussed,
Yeah.
And so these are some of the things, these were some of the pleasures. And also, I remember during Bohuman, I went, we were shooting in Oxford Bookshop. And I bought him this book called Vegetarian, written by this, I think, this Chinese or Korean author. It was brilliant. And I said, "Have you read this?" He said, "No." Sorry?
Sorry. She'd won the Booker. Sorry. Please go ahead.
Chinese author.
And he said no, and I said, "Wait a minute," and I ran downstairs and I bought the book and I gave it to him. He said, "No, why are you giving it to me?" I said, "Because I want you to read it, and so that we can discuss it later." So that was the kind of relationship we had, where we discussed books a lot, literature we discussed a lot, we discussed politics quite a bit. These were some of the areas of discussion that we had. And of course, as always, there's a little just sort of spiced a little with gossip once in a while. And then he used to tease me a lot because I used to make, I used to make smoothie. That was a ritual, especially in Boshu Poribar. I used to mix muri. They used to all bring me all kinds of things like piyaz and chura and stuff like that, and I used to make jhal muri, and everyone used to love it. All the unit members used to have it. Soumitra would also, and he used to ask for more. And then he said, Reena, if ever you run out of work, you have an alternative profession as a muri wali.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So, great sense of humor as well.
Yeah. Yes.
And wit.
That was always there. And
I'm wondering if, Aparna, I'm wondering if you want to spice it up with a little bit of harmless gossip that you did discuss with Soumitra.
No. I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah.
I'm just joking.
No. But it was all in good humor, and there was really no malice at all.
I'm sure.
I mean, he wasn't a malicious person. Neither am I. So
No.
there was no malice.
Yeah.
But what I admired, I need to tell you that what I admired most about him, and to that extent, he became a kind of mentor for me also, along with my father and Satyajit Ray and Upal Dotto and people like that. I have seen many actors whom I admired, many very powerful actors, I'll in fact name them. I don't see why I shouldn't. Like Chinmoy Rai, who I'd seen in this play Raj Rakto. He was brilliant. And he remained a good actor till the end of his life, but he kind of got sucked into the kind of morass, into the kind of, there was something about mainstream Taliganj that wasn't so good. That Soumitra could keep his head above that he could, while doing mainstream films, which he didn't always like, he also, he kept at writing poetry, paintings, doing his paintings, and he used to carry this red cloth-bound notebook with him, which we call in Bengali Khero Khata. And he he used to jot down lines of poetry. Sometimes he would read them to us. Dekho to kemon hoyeche. I still remember one. Kohio tumi biral hobe kina. It started Kohio tumi biral hobe kina. So he used to read out these little bits of poetry that he wrote. He used to sketch costumes or set designs for a play that he was planning, or he would write down points about a character that he was going to play, a difficult character that he was going to play soon, that kind of thing. So he was always completely engaged, and he wasn't sucked into this mainstream morass at all. And that was something that I thought, because I had often thought, should I get into this mainstream film business? Because you can't actually have a career unless you do act also in mainstream cinema. But my father and mother weren't too keen, and I myself was in two minds. And I thought that it will just ruin me. I mean, I'll lose everything. But it was Soumitra who kind of was a shining example of being able to be in mainstream cinema and still continue with his intellectual pursuits.
Yeah. And I think it's also the cultural space that you'll occupy, Aparna, because both you and Soumitra have been in Kolkata. You've been there, you've worked there, you've lived there all your life.
Yeah.
You've also done so much of theatre, and that's something we should talk about.
Theatre was absolutely his first love, Shivgita. Even though he actually acted in so many films, more than perhaps we can count, theatre was always his first love. Always. I think Shishir Kumar Bhaduri had a tremendous impact on his life. It was, I think, only when he saw Pathir Panchali that he realized that films could also be true to life and so on. And he was happy working with Ray, and he worked in 14 films with Ray. But he won so many accolades, both at home and abroad. I mean, he got the Dada Saheb Phalke, he got the Padma Bhushan, he got the 2 French awards, everything. But he remained very level-headed and very grounded, always. I mean, there was nothing, all these awards didn't stop him from being the fun-loving, humble, intellectual person that he was. That never came in the way. He never thought of himself as, oh, look at me, I'm so big and I'm such a star. He wasn't a star. Actually, that was something that we had in common. He went to the coffee house, even after he had become a very big star. Shunil Ganguly, Shakti Chattopadhyay, Tarapodo Babu, all these people, they all went to the coffee house, and they sort of brewed up a storm always in their coffee cup, so to speak. And they were discussing politics, they were discussing art, painting, poetry above all of this. And people got so used to seeing him there that I think they just took him for granted. They didn't think anything of it. I too have actually frequented the coffee house myself so much, because both of us were very zealous, of our, we're very protective about our freedom. He too, I mean, he went for walks, he went to the bazaar, and he did his shopping and so on. And he, one gets used to seeing you. It's only when you're hiding behind dark glasses that people kind of get more and more intrigued and want to. And a lot of stars deliberately do that in order to retain their stardom. But I don't think either Soumitra or I were really so interested in becoming stars as we were interested in becoming actors.
Thank you, Aparna. That was really good. You have directed Soumitra Babu in Paramitar Ekdin, and
that's right.
Very important role. And Soumitra Babu himself said যে আমি ঠিক বুঝতে পারলাম না যে কখন অপর্ণা এই যে নায়িকা থেকে আস্তে আস্তে পরিচালকের দিকে ডিরেক্টরের দিকে।
এটা বলেছেন
হ্যাঁ,
Oh, he
আমি
said that. I didn't know.
এত সুন্দরভাবে the transition from the actress to the director. So এই সম্বন্ধে মানে
I
ডিরেক্টর
must tell you a little anecdote, if I may. You know, they after 36 Chowringhee Lane got the Grand Prix at Manila, all my dadas and didis in Tollygunj were very, very excited and happy. And like Rumadi and Drovida and Bhanuda and all of these people. And they, what they did was they had a kind of a felicitation for me. And over there, they kept getting up and speaking about me, etc. I was getting more and more embarrassed. And when Soumitra got up to speak, I said, "Will you read a poem for me?" So he said, "What? Tell me what poem?" I mean, if I remember, I said, "I know you remember." I said, "Will you read Rekhoma Dasheremoni of Michael Madhusudan Dotto?" And he, of course, knew it by heart, and he read it for me. I'll never forget that. And you were asking me, I'm sorry, I just digressed. You were asking me something.
The Paramitar Ekdin when you directed Soumitra Babu.
Yes, yes.
Film.
Well, you know what happened was that I wanted a kind of a wave of hair, a wave over his forehead, because he was supposed to be a failed lover, but very romantic. And I wanted that romantic look. And Soumitra's hair at that time, I think, wasn't as much as before, so it didn't have that wave. So we had to settle for a wig, even though neither he nor I had wanted a wig. But I have to say that, you know, he said to and this I'll never forget, that he said to the makeup person, you know, Rina has been asking for a wave on my forehead for the longest time. That's how she visualizes this character, Monimoy Bishash. And it is up to us, you as the makeup person and me as the actor, to give the director what she wants.
Of course. Big.
I mean, so, you know, having worked with Ray, he knew that he knew the role of a director in a film. And whenever, of course, one didn't have to say very much to him, because most of the time he knew what I wanted, because I write the script in great detail and he had read it. And of course, he immediately got it. And but once in a while, when I would want something different, I would go up to him, always go up close to him, whisper. I would say, you know, you did it your way, which was very nice, but now will you do it my way with this little bit of change? And then he laughed and he said, "Of course, you're the director. Why are you being so shy? Why? You must tell me what you want." And of course, it was very easy to direct him. He put all my fears of directing somebody I called Soumitra Kaka. I mean, I didn't call him Soumitra Kaka then, but in my mind, he was always Soumitra Kaka. I never got rid of that kind of feeling of slight awe, respect, little bit of fear, all of that was always there. And so even though we were friends, and I thought, my God, how will I direct him? How will I say anything? He's been directed by the likes of Satyajit Ray and Mrinal Sen. And but I have to say, and he used to tease me a lot. He used to tease me a lot, saying, "Ei je boro director, amake to nao na." You know, which means you've become a big director, you never cast me. Of course, I'm just a small-time actor. He used to say things like that. And I would say, you know, but to cast you, one has to have a role befitting you. If I ever do Motilal Padri in Bengali, then I would cast you. And of course, I never did. And well, that's an opportunity lost.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you for sharing all those experiences.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for spending
Aparna.
Sorry.
Thank you for your time today.
Pleasure, of course.
Thank you, Aparna. Pleasure seeing you again.
Bye. Thank you.
Bhalo thakben. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, and you too.
Yeah,
all of you.
Thank you.
Anirban, will we now?
We have Paulami
statement.
Yeah. So shall we do Gautam Ghosh first? I think if we just, because Paulami is there, So if you just do Paulami because he seems to, then I'm ringing him. Okay.
Should I?
Thank
Yes.
you, Amish. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
you, Amish,
Yeah.
for your time.
And
It's a
Thank you
pleasure.
very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Amongst the many people who are joining us today, I think we're very, very specially privileged to have Soumitra's daughter, Paulami, with us. It's not just a father and daughter relationship between them. They have been together on the Bengali stage over the years, and it's been also an extraordinary story, which Paulami will tell us more about. So let us welcome her here. She has another event or a commitment after this, so we'd like to introduce her at this point.
Thank you, Shangita Di. We are bringing Paulami in stage in front of you in a minute. We just have a small clip showing the moments of the Paulami with Soumitra Babu, and then Paulami will be with us.
প্রতিদিন যিনি অন্ন জুগিয়ে দেন ভিক্ষার অন্নে তাকেই যে চোখে পড়ে আর ঘরে মনে হয় আমার অন্ন নিজের শক্তিতে ভোগ করছি
কিন্তু এই মেঘে খেতে গেলে তো অনেক রকম লোকের দুয়ারে গিয়ে দাঁড়াতে হয় সে কি তোমার ভালো লাগে
আমাদের বড় ঘোড়াটা একটু দেখেছি অন্য রকম আমরা রোজ সন্ধ্যাবেলা বাপি হারমোনিয়াম নিয়ে বসতেন বাপিও গলা সারতেন আমরাও গলা সারতাম ফুল সে হাসিতে হাসিতে ঝরে জোছনা হাসিয়া মিলায় যায় হাসিতে হাসিতে আলোক সাগরে আকাশের তারাতে আগে কায় আমার মতন সুখী কে আছে আয় সুখী আয় আমার কাছে সুখী হৃদয়ের সুখের গান শুনিয়া তোদের জুড়াবে প্রাণ
Paulami, অনেক ধন্যবাদ. Many thanks for joining us.
নমস্কার অনির্বাণ
from Kolkata, and really grateful. And just carrying on from Sharmila Di and Aparna Di, we are coming to the area where the inspiration came, and obviously you are seeing Soumitra Babu from the very tender age, and then coming up in this cultural acumen. So if you tell us all regarding the inspiration which grew from the childhood, and we have seen you in the dramas when we were in Shailushik, and I fondly remember Soumitra Babu coming to the Shailushik shows with Shromana, your sister, used to act with us, and Commercial Mukherjee's direction, and I've met Soumitra Babu a number of times there, and even with the small roles, he used to come and he used to tell us, how beautifully we have done. We have just small, actors doing alongside our, world of medicine, and we have seen you at that stage as well, helping us. তুমি আমাকে একটু বলো যে তোমার এই যে ছোটবেলা থেকে the inspiration which grew with Soumitra Babu, and how it, took from the actor director, and then obviously the role reversal. Director, actor.
Actually, when we were growing up, we didn't realize at that time, my brother and me, but we grew up in a very in an atmosphere where music, dance, theater, literature, painting, everything was that was our norm. Discussing that was the norm. We never had there wasn't a day when we didn't have an adda in our house where we hello Shangita Di, how are you?
Hello, I'm seeing you after a very long time. It's an absolute
after a very long time, Shangita Di. I hope you're doing well.
We're doing well.
But it's yes, but it's a very sad occasion to,
and a lot of admiration for the way you have dealt with life as a
thank
kid.
you. Thank
Really?
you, but it's difficult. Anyway, but like I was saying, I think Shangita Di, we grew up in an atmosphere where we would have a discussion about some kind of art form every other day. We were introduced to paintings, to sculpture, to theater, to singing, to dancing. I used to be a classical dancer, Bharatanatyam dancer. I'm just in fact coming from a tribute where we were discussing how while growing up, all these influences which were introduced to us by my father They played a huge role in developing and shaping the person who I am today. So to be a dancer or a theater artist was almost a given thing, that I would be I would be in a stream where culture was most important. So that's the way we grew up, and we were taught that, like you were saying, that he would go to these uh, plays of Shoilu. He has always been like that. He would encourage people to write poetry. He would give his poetry to every little magazine possible. Anyone who would ask for his poems, he would give one of his. Anybody who asked him to come and see their play, he would go and see their play. He he was like that. He was very appreciative uh, of the people who practiced the arts and the letters. He was very appreciative of people uh, who wanted to do something for themselves in this sphere. So that was the atmosphere we grew up in. So I think it was just natural that I too went into doing theatre, because my mother had this group called Protikriti, a theatre group, and we used to have these rehearsals at home. And my father would direct some of their plays also. So, and plus he would direct plays for Abhinetri Shango. So I would accompany him on his rehearsals and I would watch him. So that is how all these things developed. My father was also very, very appreciative of every other art form, not just acting.
Yeah.
We were taken to see dance performances by the greats like Bala Saraswati, Yamini Krishnamurti, Kamala Lakshman, Vajanti Mahalaji, and so many people, the Kathakali greats like Raman Kutti Nair, and so many people. We were encouraged to uh, listen to classical music and read the books, and I was always a little rebellious. I would always read not the classics, I would always read almost everything I could lay my hands on and listen to Vivid Bharati and everything. But he encouraged that also. He said, yes, you must you must develop a catholicity of taste. So that's where, and then when I started acting, like you were saying, I started acting with him from a very young age. Uh, to be very honest, I used to be very scared of him before. Not as a father, he was a very gentle soul. He was a very gentle soul. When we were growing up, I don't think he ever scolded us. He would just become very stern and very, he'd look very severe. So that was enough for us to feel bad and realize that we had done something wrong. He never scolded us. Yelled at us is something unimaginable. But on stage, when he was directing initially, I used to be a little afraid of him, and because he wouldn't think that I'm his daughter or something. He would reprimand me in front of everyone, and I remember I sometimes would go back home and tell my mother, he just ticks me off in front of everyone else, and I feel very bad, and I'm not going to go back again. Thankfully, my mother dissuaded me and said, no, you must stick it out and learn from him. So that's what I did. And over the years, we developed a partnership. The extent I always realized what he was going to say even before he'd said it. And sometimes I used to have a lot of problems in his way of the way he approached a character, because I couldn't. In fact, I remember we were doing a play called Arohan, and which was incidentally, it was adapted from Lillian Hellman's Little Foxes. So, and I was doing this role of a closet alcoholic, and I just couldn't get under the skin of the character, to the extent that we were almost, we had come close to the night we were going to premiere the play, and I was still not getting it. So I told my father that, please let me go. I don't think I'm doing it well at all, and I'm making a mess out of it. So find someone else. There's still time. Find someone else. And he told me that, listen, I know you better than you know yourself. I know you'll eventually get it. You'll just have to let yourself go. You just have to believe in me as a director, believe in your character, and you must also believe in yourself. So I took his advice, and ultimately I did get it, and I did receive a lot of praise for that play. But it was true. He really guided me. He was there for me, and he believed in me more than I believed in myself. So it was a very, very fruitful partnership.
Absolutely. No, but I mean, I remembered Soumitra Babu saying to, you told about Utpal Dotto, ও কি সব পারছে এতে, তখন দত্ত বলেছে না ও তো সব পারে এতে, এই যে একটা মানে কনফিডেন্স না, তখন I think your mother said as well, না ও কি সব একটু দেখি টেকি দাও, সব কি পারছে টারছে, না না ও তো সব পারে। Utpal Dotto said the same thing as well when you went for your first
Yeah, my parents were very, when I first went to do theatre, I started off with Utpal Datta, and my parents were very worried that I'd make a mess. But they asked him to show me the ropes and all that, but Utpal Datta was very kind, very nice, and I learned a lot from him as well as I learned from my father. So
yeah. So Paulami, tell us, regarding the role reversal, obviously from actor director, then you become the director actor, where you're directing the maestro with Kalamri Goya. If you remember, the Kalamri Goya was
yes,
the first.
we started with Kalamri Goya. In fact, it was a very interesting story. When I started doing Kalamri Goya, I did not change the script, but I interpreted it in my own way. Especially, it was very different from your usual Robindro Nritya Natyos. So there was a lot of opera involved. We were singing on stage and we were dancing. Plus, the dance had Bharatanatyam, Mohiniyattam, Kathakali. The musical instruments that were used were different, and we used a lot of cello and Western classical instruments. So, and I interpreted it very differently. So, when I said that you have to do Andho Muni, he said okay, and he agreed almost to humor me, because he was not sure what I would be doing. And he said, okay, since you're asking, okay, I'll do it. And all throughout the rehearsal, couldn't grasp exactly how this production was shaping up. So finally, on the last day of our stage rehearsal, the day before we premiered the production, that was the day he finally saw the production. And I remember a friend of ours, Paramita, was there. And that's the day he said that, now I know what you wanted to do. And I must say, I'm very, very impressed, because I seriously didn't think that Kalmriga could be interpreted this way. And that's when I started my directorial work with Kalmriga. And needless to say, he was brilliant as Andho Muni, and whatever I had envisioned, whatever I had thought of, he just lifted the play, I think, 10 times higher. His presence was such. And, once he was convinced of what he was doing, there was no stopping him. And I remember in the script, he had sketched how Andho Muni would look like. He was very keen on what the costumes would be like. And because it was slightly different, we didn't have those typical dance drama costumes and all that. He was very excited. He's very excited about the color palette of the whole production. I still remember him, calling up people and saying, you have to come and see. Oh, don't worry about my other plays. Come and see Kalmrigoya. He had a short part in it, Andho Muni. Not throughout the play, but he was, I think, very, very excited about that. But as far as directing him goes, I couldn't have asked for a more disciplined actor. He was there 5 minutes before rehearsal time. He was always prepped and ready for his part. In fact, on subsequent all the other plays that I directed him in Phera and Ghotok Biday, he gave a lot to the production, not just as an actor. He was both in Phera and in Ghotok Biday. I again interpreted it very differently, and especially in Phera, I edited the play a lot. I did away with 7 characters. I sort of approached the play very differently than when he had done. Phera is incidentally Frederick Dürrenmatt's The Visit. Yeah. That was adapted as Phera, and then that was adapted by him. But I must say, he was very generous to allow me to do that editing, because he was the writer of the play. But he
Yeah.
was very generous. He allowed me to do the editing, and he was a very, very non-interfering actor. In spite of the fact that it was his play, in spite of the fact that, he was Soumitra Chatterjee, let's face that. In spite of the fact that he had already done this play before, he was extremely non-interfering. He would just do his part, come and sit down. If he at all had a suggestion, he would always call me separately and tell me, do you think that this could be done differently, or do you think he's doing well, this actor, or do you think you could help this actor out with something else? And he also said that if you want me to talk to the actors, to help them out to do a part, tell me. So, to work with him was a dream. When the plays would go on, he would never be the one to just sit back in the green room and relax when his part was not there. He would be right next to the wing, sitting and watching the play throughout. Even we did 100 shows of Pira. All the 100 shows, he was right next to the wings. He was not in the green room when his part. He was sitting and watching the play. Every 100 show. Every show.
It's a big
So
lesson for everyone.
that kind of commitment was something something we all learned from. That kind of discipline, that kind of bringing so much more to the play than just being an actor.
Yeah.
Every day was a learning experience for all of us.
Yeah.
Every day, the tribute that I was in a little while earlier, I was just saying that I've learned so many things from him when he didn't even try to teach me. He was just being himself.
Yeah.
When he was doing music for the play Rajkumar,
Yeah.
he was using this music piece from Dvorak's New World Symphony. And at that point of time, I was very young. I had not heard of Dvorak. So he introduced me to so many classical music greats. He introduced me to so many things. I mean, now when he's not there anymore, and I just I was just sitting back and I was thinking, I'm sorry. I think that he taught me by just being himself. He taught
Yeah.
me so many things. And, you know, I'm lucky. So I am going to celebrate his life, and I'm going to celebrate his teachings.
Absolutely.
We're forming an archive on him. Me and a couple of others, we've got together. We're going to form an archive.
Yeah.
Shongitadi, I might need your help on that.
Always,
Oh,
always.
yeah.
I'll see you.
So
I'm going to be there next week, and I'll catch up with you very soon.
I would love to do that. Would love to
Yeah.
catch up with you.
It's
So
fascinating to me that you talk about this relationship with your father, which is not just a familial relationship, but one on the stage, and where you've learned so much without really having him to teach you. And it's this marvelous quality of absorption. I think this is how you've become who you are. All of us become who we are because we are absorbing certain values and certain ideals which are not being thrust in our
absolutely.
face, but which are being
No,
practiced. And
yes,
this
which are
very
being
Bengali middle class milieu of growing up with music, literature, dance, performing arts, it's just
exactly.
part of the way we have been shaped. That's how our minds are. And quite often, you meet people from some other part of India, and they'll be like, oh, okay, so you're literature and you teach, but you also sing, and you also used to dance, and you also direct. And sometimes they just can't get their
Yes,
hands around this idea that we are not putting this up as an act. It is an all-encompassing education and growing up that we've had, and we are just taking it
exactly.
forward. And I'd love
You're
to ask you,
absolutely
because
right.
somewhere you said that on every birthday, Bapi would not give us presents from the market or from the shops. He would write a poem for each one of us in the
Exactly.
look at
That
that.
has been the best gift ever, because not just for me, for my mother, my brother, and after my kids were born, for my children also. Every birthday, we have not received a gift which was bought. It was always a poem. That too, he would write in that, wonderful handwriting of his, and he would presented to us on our birthday, first thing in the morning. And I've treasured all those. They're with me, and I think those are the things that's going to be my strength from now on. I'm going to cling on to them.
And also that extraordinary discipline, because he used to talk a lot about this, the morning walk, the importance of the shakalir bayam, or the exercise regime in
Oh,
the morning, as
absolutely.
far as he could, as long as he could. That was really part of his daily
Exactly.
regime. Yeah. And
Absolutely, always.
quite often we think, because you're a theatre practitioner, in many parts of the world, including here in the UK, the great actors, they take time off from film and then they do Shakespeare or they come to
Yeah.
stage. But for that
Yeah.
span of time, they don't work on a film. Now,
No.
Soumitra continued with his 300 odd films that he's worked on. He was
Absolutely, he
always
did.
on the sets and in the studios, and he was also there always practicing, not just for days, but for weeks on weeks on weeks, doing rehearsals in the very committed
Yes.
manner that you talked about.
Yes.
And I think that just makes him probably the most extraordinary and the most special artist in the world, where
Yeah.
his entire day could accommodate
Mhm.
all this, and he could still deliver with such excellence.
Yes,
Absolutely.
he believed in doing all these things together. Even, he would when he was sitting in the rehearsal room, when he wasn't rehearsing himself, but was waiting for his part to come on, he would sit and sketch. He would write down points about his character. He would make a list of things to do the next day. He would never sit idle.
Yeah.
He would never ever sit idle. He would just think of ways to keep himself engaged. And
Engaged.
there was also one thing, like when you talk about actors in the UK taking time off from their films to do theatre, but in Kolkata, theatre didn't pay that much. So
No.
there was also another reason that he had to keep acting. He thought that if he didn't, he wanted to keep acting in films because that was his livelihood, and theatre was his passion.
Yeah.
And there was, unfortunately, theatre doesn't pay that much in Calcutta.
Yeah.
It's slowly paying now. It's slowly starting to pay now. But when he was at the height of his career, when it wasn't so lucrative, theatre wasn't so
Not at all.
paying.
Good to hear that theatre is paying artists now.
Yes,
Exactly.
it is. A lot of people are flocking. Actually, before the lockdown, I'm just talking about before the lockdown. After the lockdown, we've all stopped work. There's no work. But till the lockdown in March, people were flocking to our theatre halls. We were doing full house shows, and there was a regular stream of uh, audience, coming and filling up our houses. And also, there in Calcutta, at least, there has been a theatre going audience has developed. So that was very encouraging. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen now after this, because people are really afraid because of the pandemic,
Yeah.
and rightfully so. So
I'm
let's see
sure
what
we'll come
happens.
out of, yeah. We'll come out of this, and
Mhm.
people will continue,
Absolutely,
talking to the theatre.
absolutely.
We'll make sure that
Mhm.
with your productions, with so many nice productions going on, and
Yes,
thank you very much. And the most important
thank
thing I
you.
think is, like, the generation next, like Soumitra who has done it, passing on to the generation next with the same sort of enthusiasm, same sort of
Mhm.
talent, and grace which you are carrying on. That's the, I believe, is the learning point. It's a learning lesson, as you said.
Thank you
Uh,
so much.
yeah, being on the, you have also observed this, someone after 100 shows, if it's on the side screen all the time, that itself gives that
Exactly,
high,
that encouragement,
we all
that
do this.
that
Yeah,
extra fillip to go on further. Yeah.
absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me, Anirban and
Thank you.
Shongita Di. It's great
Thank
to
you.
be here. Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Paulami. Thank you very much. Look after yourself.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe. Bhalo theko. Yeah,
You
thank
all,
you.
you too.
Thank you.
ভালো থেকো।
Right. That was big experience with Paulami, emotional, and but also carrying on with the good work. Shongita Di, shall we just go on with the Gautam Dana. Gautam Ghosh has kindly sent
At
us
this point,
this.
we would like to play a message from the director Gautam Ghosh. And all of you who are familiar with Indian cinema know that Gautam Ghosh is one of our leading directors. And the one very special work that he did was this acknowledgement or a nod to Satyajit Ray's Days and Nights in the Forest. And he did a film called Abar Orone, where he brought back the cast, the core cast of Orone Din Ratri. He also did another very memorable film with Soumitra, which was Dakha, which is this part of a blind writer that Soumitra played with such powerful conviction. I saw it when I was very young, but it's just remained as one of those keystones of performances in my memory of cinema. We'd like to play Gautam Da's very brief statement and thank him again for being part of this panel.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gautam Da. And we're just playing the...
Demise of Soumitra Chatterjee is a great loss for Bengal and international cinema as well. We are still mourning for Soumitra. I haven't seen such a long mourning in recent time. As a matter of fact, knowingly or unknowingly, he had encompassed our cultural horizon for 6 decades. Imagine more than 3 generations of admirers for Soumitra. It's a personal loss indeed for me. I am fortunate enough of directing him in 4 films. Each and every project was a fantastic experience for me. He used to come on the set fully prepared. He used to tell jokingly, I need time to prepare because I'm a weak actor. I think it's a great lesson for all of us. A man for all seasons is certainly one of the last Mohicans of Bengal Renaissance.
So there was Gautam Das saying he was the last of the last Mohicans of the Bengal Renaissance. And we have been talking about Soumitra Da as a polymath. Also, this epithet of Renaissance man fits him so well as his wide-ranging, faceted personality, which we are talking about now. Should we move now to the next?
Yeah, we're moving to the next section, and we're going to Suman Mukhopadyay, the Kinglier section.
No, we'll go to that a little later, because at this point, we want to bring in the British practitioners.
Yes,
and, I'd like to introduce Professor Rachel Dwyer.
Yeah. So, shall we do Rachel first then?
Yes, I'd like to just say a few words about Rachel. For all of you who are in film studies or in this space of Indian UK culture, you will be familiar with the name of Professor Rachel Dwyer. She's now Professor Emerita at SOAS, and for many, many years she has been teaching language and cinema in SOAS. Personally, for me, it's a long connection. I've known Rachel since the time I moved to London, and we've done many events at SOAS, which she hosted. She's a wonderful friend, a very, very curious and a very invigorating academic. She's done a lot for theorizing Bollywood, and many of her students now are also carrying on that wonderful work. But we asked Rachel to talk about those times as she grew up on Indian cinema, and there was an audience here for international cinema. There was an audience here for world cinema, and Satyajit Ray's films played a large part over there. That's how Rachel first saw Soumitra in his films. We'll play a statement from Rachel now.
Rachel Dwyer, Professor Emerita at SOAS University of London, 1st of December 2020. So long before I'd seen a mainstream Hindi film, I saw Indian films at the BFI and at art house cinemas in London. This was the only cinema that I saw until my late 20s, and Soumitra featured in many of these films alongside a number of other actors I saw again and again, who soon became familiar faces, Chabi Biswas, Robbie Ghosh, Utpal Datta, Supriya Chaudhary, Karuna Banerjee and all. But Soumitra was always the one who seemed to be the hero, good-looking, charming. But he wasn't a star in the way that Uttam Kumar was. He was never a Mahanayak. And of course with Uttam, he acted in a different kind of cinema, he had a different off-screen life, and of course acted in Ray's film Nayak as well, where he showed he was a serious actor too. But he was always, to me, a star and an actor, where Soumitra was very much an actor. I mean, Soumitra's off-screen life wasn't really of much interest. I know he supported various causes, social, maybe even political, but I couldn't really tell you anything else about him, and I never wanted to know. He was the roles that he played on screen, and they were more than enough for me. For me, Soumitra embodied Bengali cinema, and indeed a vision of India. I associate Soumitra with authors, mostly with Satyajit Ray, the director whose work I know best, but he also performed wonderfully with other directors such as Tapan Singha. He was also the Bengali literary hero, given how many of the films he acted in were adaptations of novels by Rabindranath, Vibhuti Bhushan Banerjee and others. Yet Soumitra made these roles his. We all love Patapanchali, and I'm sure, though, I'm not the only one who believes that Subir Banerjee, who plays the young child, grew up to be Soumitra. And this link must surely have been forged by Soumitra, who must have picked up from the young child some of his mannerisms and habits and so on, to make the character of Apu seem to have some sort of coherent whole. Apu is the character that perhaps appeals to many of us the most, the young man who can't really focus but wants to be a writer, who goes through terrible grief, who doesn't really know what to do with himself, but ultimately finds his redemption. I think the other character of Soumitra that we all loved very much was Feluda, a character from Ray's fiction, a character that we were all very fond of. And this detective who spends time with Topshe, his young cousin, and then is joined by the writer Jatayu, is really the Indian Sherlock Holmes, as Feluda himself acknowledges. And again, there's some great affinity between these two characters, which I think he really embodies them. But it is Soumitra's acting that's so surprising. When I think of him, first of all, I remember him as the typical Bengali hero of his generation. He's middle class, educated, enthusiastic, but somewhat lost, very romantic. And these many attributes appeal to women rather than falling for the more macho type. But just a little aside, my friend, the film critic Asim Chabra, told me a great story, personally recounted to him by Soumitra, that at an event where Ritvik Ghotak kept trying to provoke him about Satyajit Ray, Soumitra lost his temper and punched him in the face. Very unromantic hero stuff. Soumitra, of course, played many roles where he was a complex character. He might have been a little typecast as the seducer of unhappy wives, the more innocent Amal of Charulata, becoming the more exploitative Sandeep of Ghore. He also played roles which were very out of character for him, such as Narsingh in Abhijan, the inspiration for Scorsese's Taxi Driver. And Soumitra was one of those actors who, when you saw him on screen at first, you sometimes had to do a double take, even though you'd spent many hours looking at him. When he played in character, he almost became the character and unrecognisable as himself. The day Soumitra died, I watched the film Barnali, where he plays the archetypal romantic Bengali hero. I thought it was one of his lovely performances, really charming as he pursues Sharmila Tagore around Calcutta and tries to keep her away from unhappy news. And I think then Soumitra for me embodies a particular Bengaliness or perhaps even an Indianness I find very romantic and engaging. And I think, like many other women, I'd like to think perhaps that I was the Bideshini in Ami Chini Go Chini Tomare Ogo Bideshini.
Thank you, Rachel Dwyer, for that very, very interesting presentation, and also for evoking at the end that very classic of Amichini Gochini Tomari.
The classics. Yeah,
yes.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you from the core of the heart, Rachel. Thank you.
Rachel. It's a great pleasure now to bring on Farrukh Dhondy.
Yeah.
Farrukh has been, as all of you know, commissioning editor at Channel 4. Most people, I think, remember him because of his association and his commissioning of Bandit Queen and everything that followed since then. But Farrukh was also the first to program Ray's season on Channel 4. And so I'm trying to go back to a time when world cinema, international cinema, was building audiences, and Satyajit Ray was such a large part of it, and therefore intrinsically Soumitra Chatterjee reached these audiences. Hello, Farrukh. Thank you for being here.
Namaskar.
Hi, it's a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And I'd like to ask you, just to start off, you told us about programming Ray's films on television on Channel 4, and what was your first encounter with Soumitra Chatterjee through these films?
Well, one of the most important tasks, I thought, while I was at Channel 4, was to introduce the various cultures of India. Bollywood was absolutely the kind of thing that our audiences wanted to see. Because, even from Punjab or Pakistan or wherever else they came from, wherever else the immigrant Asian population came from, they were Bollywood addicts. They hardly knew that Bengali classical realistic film existed. And if one looks at what Satyajit Ray very particularly did, and how Soumitra ji interpreted the roles in that, in the realism that Satyajit brought to the screen, one can see the background that of Bengali culture. I know, Sangeeta, some while ago on this program, you said that we Bengalis are different. We sing, we dance, we do all sorts of things. We are Renaissance people as the rest of India isn't. Now, I don't want to get into trouble by saying I agree with you, but I'd like to say that it is absolutely true that it was the Bengalis who first picked up the idea of the novel. And the novel is the first literary dissension from mythological, epic, theologically led observation in literature.
Yeah.
So the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are all classics and absolutely there. But think of it, when the novel began in the West, and it was a Western creation, it was to say, let's suspend theology. Let's forget about God telling us how to behave and us trying to behave like that. Let's actually open our eyes and scientifically even look at how human beings behave. Adultery, okay, it doesn't enter religious and epic things except as a piece of evil.
Sins.
Tolstoy doesn't see it in Anna Karenina as a piece of evil. George Eliot doesn't see it in Middlemarch as something that transgresses God's rules. It's the way human beings behave. And the Bengali tradition of the novel began in India to learn from that, to take from that. I'm not saying they imitated it, but they wrote about the reality of India itself. And that's what people like Satyajit Ray, him pioneeringly did in the films. And of course, that kind of realism, to introduce a novelistic reality into film, required actors who could interpret that in the real way. Very, very different from the commercial films that came out of the mythological structures of the Indian cinema, Hindi cinema from Bombay, what we now call Bollywood. And even if you look at the great classical cinema, right? You can look at Mughal-e-Azam, you look at Mother India or something. They're great films in their own way, but they don't touch the kind of reality that Satyajit Manikda, as you call him, and Soumitra did through direction and through trying to get the reality of the Indian character on stage. So it was a remarkable achievement. And I thought, gather these films, and instead of showing Bollywood films once a week, let's show a season of Satyajit Ray. I did the same for Mrinal Sen sometime later, showed some Ritwik Ghatak films, right? But for me, right, it's a very subjective judgment. Satyajit's films stand quite out for me from all the rest. So that was my acquaintance, that was my reason. And I thought the rest of the population that watches my series of films, the classics from Bollywood, will now begin to watch something that they haven't seen before. And they'll do it because they have the habit of following the Indian series on Channel 4, and it might teach them something. And I don't believe they switched off. The audience figures stayed either stable or actually rose for the new Satyajit Ray season.
Yes.
True.
It's interesting that you say this, Farrukh, because it's also about Satyajit Ray's films, which came to the UK audience through the film festivals at BFI. His films were screened at BFI. There were awards which Satyajit Ray won himself. Yes. So Shotru's been part of this entire journey through the decades to the audiences here in the UK, whether they are the British audience or the British Asian audience.
Yes.
Yes.
Can I say, Sangeeta, that the being shown at the BFI, being shown in film festivals, has an extremely restricted audience as far as Britain is concerned, right? People don't go in their millions to film festivals. The BFI is a very special cultural niche for a particular kind of artistic aristocracy of Britain. Whereas television, right? Channel 4, for instance, is a mass conversation of the society itself. And that's where I wanted Satyajit Ray to be. And there he was.
Yeah.
True. Very true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think a giant leap, really, because even in India, we would talk about these films being part of world cinema, but not really being part of national Indian cinema. So people from other languages wouldn't be so familiar with the Bengali repertoire.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is in parallel over here, you had a largely Hindi-speaking North Indian.
Yes, indeed. But we subtitled them in English. People picked them up. I'm telling you that the audience figures stayed either steady or they increased. Now, what's very, very, very significant is that every other culture in India picked up from Satyajit Ray's example. Mrinal Sen, in an interview that we did with him, said that he learned from Nouvelle Vague, from the French films, from Russian films, this, that, and the other. I've never heard Satyajit saying that. I've never heard Soumitra Chatterjee saying that they learned from Russia or from the Nouvelle Vague or from France. And there are no tricky devices in Satyajit Ray's films. It's art as pure vision as a window pane shows you the real world. And that's what he does. So lots of people, Marathi film, right? Punjabi film even has picked up has picked up from that tradition. And some of it poses as art film and only goes into art. But what is extremely significant, and probably nobody's thought of that before I'm saying it today, is that the web series that we are seeing
Today.
on Indian television today are deviating from, at least in 10 or 20%, are deviating from the song and dance traditions of Bollywood and trying to get down to the realism that at first Manikda introduced into Indian film itself.
Yeah.
It's a great inheritance.
Yeah, that's a very interesting observation. And I love the way you bring in this whole idea about the novel and its association with film and literary adaptations that Ray had in his films. And I think Soumitra Chatterjee is one actor whose best films are mostly literary adaptations. In his own work in theatre, he was constantly adapting European literature, British literature to Bengali. So this wonderful transaction between languages and writing and literature is something to be celebrated, and we are doing that today.
Yeah, no, it was for the first time that I heard that he had entered into the Indian common film industry. I didn't know that. I knew that he'd done theatre. I knew that he used to write poetry. Of course, I knew of Abhijan, right? But I didn't know that he earned his money in mainstream theatre like any other actor. It was the first time I heard it on screen.
Yeah.
And of course, I heard of the adaptations that he'd done. And his daughter talked about doing Dvorak's music on the theatre. And that's quite an innovation. I've never lived in Calcutta, so never had the pleasure of seeing Bengali theatre there. But I've written some plays which a Bengali director has taken to Calcutta and to Dhaka and so forth.
Okay. You've also been there, Farrukh. You've been to Manikda's home with Andrew.
Of course, yes. No, the reason I went to Manikda's home, of course, to do darshan, but I was taken by Andrew Robinson, who was a friend of his and a biographer. And so we went in through this gate to the old mansion, and it was being done up. There was a lot of building work going on. So we sat in the middle of all this kind of building work that was happening, and there weren't any chairs, and all the sofas were covered up and so forth. So we sat on kind of covered up benches and so on. And Mrs. brought us some tea, and said, you shouldn't really invite, in Bengali, she said to him, you shouldn't really invite people here under these conditions. And he, in his very, very upper class English accent, said, it doesn't matter, I think they can tolerate it. And it's only Andrew and Farrukh, so. Yes. That was my very brief encounter with Chatterjee.
Yeah, but you're evoking that famous room where it's been a repository of so much creative energy.
So much creative energy, absolutely.
For his,
yes, I had my eyes wide open looking around the house to see what details I could pick up so I could relate them later. But it was a building site. It wasn't, it wasn't the house that it used to be or became after the building. I don't know what was going on, but there was dust all over the place.
Well, thank you, Farrukh, for being with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Farrukh, for being with us and sharing your nice experiences and giving your valuable time. Thank you, Farrukh.
Yes, I'll now watch the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
As I've said before, we've had several partners for this event, and the London Indian Film Festival is one of our partners. We've partnered on events before, and we've been friends with the festival for over the years. Now, a very dear friend and a film programmer who's now a world name, Carrie Soni, was supposed to be with us this afternoon to talk about the films that he has programmed at the BFI. But I've received a note quite late in the morning saying that he wasn't well. He wasn't keeping very well. He's just celebrated his birthday and has had a tough night to go through. So we are missing him today. But
Happy birthday, Carrie, if you're saying.
We will move on to the next section.
Yeah. I think Debanjan Chakrabarti is with us. We can do the recitation of Soumitra because we're moving to the Suman Mukhopadyay part. Shall we do that and then bring Debanjan Chakrabarti on stage? Yeah.
Yes. So a very brief word about this piece, which you will see now. It is a collage of images from Soumitra's films. It's been put together by Kollal Chakrabarti. The audio is Soumitra's own voice reciting a very famous and a very favorite poem from Tagore. And it's this intimate understanding of Tagore that Soumitra had, which was probably one of the strongest factors over which we bonded and had long conversations over. So right now we will play this for you. It is a Baithak production, and we would just like you to get a sense of his voice and his extraordinary poetry reading.
Yeah, thank you, Baithak UK, for this, the baritone voice of Soumitra.
যাত্রী আমি ওরে, পারবে না কেউ রাখতে আমায় ধরে, দুঃখ সুখের বাঁধন সবই মিছে, বাঁধায় ঘর রইবে কোথায় পিছে, বিষয় বোঝা টানে আমায় নিচে, ছিন্ন হয়ে ছড়িয়ে যাবে পড়ে। যাত্রী আমি ওরে, চলতে পথে গান গাহি প্রাণ ভরে, দেহ দুর্গে খুলবে সকল দ্বার, ছিন্ন হবে শিকল বাসনার, ভালো মন্দ কাটিয়ে হব পার, চলতে রব লোকে লোকান্তরে। যাত্রী আমি ওরে, যা কিছু ভার যাবে সকল সরে, আকাশ আমায় ডাকে দূরের পানে, ভাষাবিহীন অজানিতের গানে, সকাল সাঁঝে পরাণ মম টানে, কাহার বাঁশি এমন গভীর স্বরে। যাত্রী আমি ওরে, বাহির হলেম না জানি কোন ভোরে, তখন কোথাও গায়নি কোনো পাখি, কি জানি রাত কতই ছিল বাকি, নিমেষ হারা শুধু একটি আঁখি, জেগেছিল অন্ধকারের পরে।
So thanks once again to Kollal Chakrabarti, who puts this video together for us.
Very nicely done.
To the next section. And again, it's a great pleasure to have an old friend from the same university. We are all from Jadavpur University, Kolkata. Debanjan Chakrabarti, who today is the head of British Council East India. It's a great pleasure to have you here. Debanjan, I think at this moment we should, keeping these ideas about the links between UK and India. Farrukh spoke about it and Rachel has spoken about that before. And now as we carry on and we talk a little bit more about Soumitra's involvement in theatre, I'd like to zone down on Shakespeare. And on one hand, it's one of my life's greatest regrets that when I made the film Life Goes On, and it was an adaptation of A Father and Three Daughters in contemporary UK, my first choice was Soumitra. And with Soumitra and Sharmila, it was going to be a wonderful casting coup. We had long discussions over Shakespeare's Lear over the phone. We had long discussions once the script was sent to him. But unfortunately, that was the time when his cancer was diagnosed and he had to get into treatment. So we didn't have him in our film. A few years later, he called up and said, I couldn't do your film, but I'm now doing Raja Lear. I'm doing the Bengali adaptation of King Lear, and you have to come and see it, which is how I saw the play at Madhusudhan Mancho. And you, of course, have seen it also, Debanjan. So tell us a little bit about your experience and your memories of King Lear. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Yeah, now we can hear you.
No, you're on mute, I think.
Are you on mute? We can't hear you.
The voice is not coming up. Can you check your audio? Because when we tested, that audio was all right, I think. Yeah. Maybe Debanjan, you can log out and log in again.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
I think I fixed the problem.
No
Hi.
problem.
Thank you so much, Shongita. Thank you, Anirban, for having me with all of you this evening. Baithak UK, Essex Indians, you've done such a fantastic job in paying this tribute to the legend that was Soumitra Chatterjee. He lives within us, as we have heard over and over again this evening. Before I go on to talk about my perception of Raja Lear, which was just an astounding performance that I watched in Rabindra Shodon in 2012, I think. I wanted, if I may, Shongita, talk a little bit about my fascination with Soumitra Chatterjee. I fell in love with films thanks to the two Feluda films as a medium. And when I look back at the history of Indian cinema, and this is what I think Farrukh was also getting at, that, Ray was part of, very much, central to, and therefore Soumitra Chatterjee was part of the movement that modernized Indian films. And Sonar Kella is obviously not the grand, realistic, famous films. It's mostly celebrated amongst us Bengalis. But it was great to hear Amish mention it, because I think when I think of Sonar Kella coming out in 1974, and in 1975 comes Sholay, I think these two films, with those two absolutely epic scenes around the train, made a tremendous impact on I think generations of film lovers who have grown up in the 70s and the 80s, and I think that needs to be recognized. And in the Feluda films, he acts with his eyes in ways that very few Indian actors have done on screen. So I think that really is, for me, the measure of the man that was Soumitra Chatterjee. I think Raja Lear was, I think, has been in production for a while, and I watched it at Suman Mukhopadyay's invitation. I'm, just like you and I, Shongita, Shumon, and I went to university together, to the same university. Lalda invited me to watch this production in Rabindra Shodon, and I think it is one of the most astounding adaptations. It's not an adaptation, but performances of King Lear in another language on world's screen. What is extraordinary about Raja Lear, the play, was Soumitra Chatterjee's performance. Obviously, he was this Olympian, regal king who falls from grace in what is acknowledged as Shakespeare's greatest tragedy. But there was also something very Soumitra Chatterjee-like in his depiction of Raja Lear, which was it was a later stages of the play when his the layers of kingship and royalty and that Olympian heights, he has fallen from that. He becomes an every man, old man, very quotidian, very middle class, and very himself in so many ways. And I think when I watched Moyurakki very recently, there were shades of that. I mean, in Raja Lear, there were shades of that lonely old man emerging, which was very relatable in ways that is particularly Bengali, I would say, because Calcutta is this city that I get into big tiffs with my friends when they say it's you speak so highly of Calcutta, but it is after all a geriatric city, and maybe statistically there is, or even anecdotally, there is a measure of truth in it. And this characterization of Raja Lear as the old man who is sort of um, kind of losing it, has lost it, was so real, so relatable, which is what makes, I think, Raja Lear very, very special. And I think Shumanda Lalda's depict, the way he put the production together, the stage design was quite remarkable, I think. And so this was my perception of Raja Lear. It was very interesting that you mentioned Dakha. Gautam Ghosh spoke shortly before we came on screen. I reviewed the film for The Telegraph when it came out, and what a stunning performance on screen it is. So I think those kind of leaps into the unknown that Soumitra Chatterjee was capable of, both on stage and on screen. And my great regret will always be that not having watched Soumitra Chatterjee on stage more. And I saw on the comments box that, is there a recording of Raja Lear? I think we should ask Lalda that. I'm not aware of such a recording. But in the way that Soumitra Chatterjee straddles both the worlds, he reminds me of Sir Ian McKellen. In fact, in many ways, I think they resemble each other. Their kind of activism of the causes they were passionate about, and their easy. The ease with which they operated on stage and on screen, I think Soumitra Chatterjee and Sir Ian McKellen are quite similar kind of talent globally.
Interesting that you say that. Yeah, Debanjan. And yes, I have been hounding Suman, asking from the first day itself, where is the video of King Lear? So he has assured us that he's looking for it. And as a board member of the British Shakespeare Association, I'm very interested in making sure that we have a younger and a newer audience here watch this interpretation of King Lear. Hopefully we will be able to do that.
Should you find it, even if Lalda is able to find footage of the rehearsals, please let me know, and from British Council we'll be absolutely delighted to come on board for that particular aspect, and also on the British Shakespeare Society. I'd be very interested, both personally and professionally, to work
more about
closely with you. Yeah.
That will be really nice, Debanjan. I think it should be restored. Such a piece of work. Yeah. That'll be really, really helpful. Yeah.
As you can see, just behind me is a globe poster of this is from 2000, when Shakespeare was voted the man of the millennium.
Yes.
You've got some stills of Raja Lear, which I
which we
just demonstrated during the talk, so those are really nice as well. Those are almost like live performances.
It's a stunning performance. I think my great regret is not being able to not having watched more of his stage performances.
Sure. Thank you, Debanjan.
Now Suman's statement. Before that, I'd just like to thank Debanjan for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debanjan. Thank you.
Come back from your first outing.
Yes, in many months.
So you had a break at Right Chalk and you're back. So thanks for being back on time and being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Because I think events like this should create an extension, should create the possibility of something to come after this. So we
yes, absolutely. So Raja Lear is a wonderful note to end my conversation in this program, and I really look forward to Lalda's comments. and the great pleasure of working very closely with him in 2009 when we presented him in London Book Fair. Shongita, you were also part of it. And he had just, I think he was high on the success of Herbert. And I think it's one of the greatest films ever made in India. And I think it's one of the conundrums that, Bengali film industry is very celebrated in Bengal and internationally, and there's nothing in between. I don't know why, but it's something that there needs to be resolved through platforms like this.
It's the market. It's the capitalist market.
Yeah.
At Bollywood.
Well, I always joke with my colleagues that, we Bengalis are the French of India, and rest of India don't get us, but that really is a joke. So.
Yeah, I think Debanjan, it is our responsibility, and we can do it. I think it's just to taking it to the next.
We should do it,
and
we
I
should.
think that's definitely needs to be done.
Yeah.
Debanjan, thanks a lot again. Thank you for your valuable time. Thank you. Shongitadi, so shall we go to Suman Mukhopadyay's?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to separately introduce Suman Mukhopadyay here, who's one of the most highly respected theatre directors, stage directors, and film director from Bengal. He has a whole trajectory of award-winning productions associated with his name. And we're very, very pleased to share this statement that he sent us. He's not been able to be with us because simultaneously at the same time, there are tribute events happening in India, in Kolkata, every day. And this is, momentous. And as Gautam Das said, that he's not seen such a long period of mourning or remembrance for a very, very long time. So since 15th November, everyone, whether they are big groups or state groups or theatre amateur groups, people have been coming together to remember a very extraordinary artist.
Of course. I think it's good that everyone is coming on board, because more you do, more people will know about it and will take it forward.
Yes, absolutely.
So
it's also a way to deal with grief, Anirban, when you feel that sense of emptiness. It's and I have felt it before also when Rituparna passed away, that at the end of a phone call, you'll be able to have a conversation, a question will be answered, or some writing work can be shared with somebody. When that is not there suddenly,
we
come together to do this. And we saw that at Soumitra's last journey from Ravindra Shadan, the way people came together and the respect and the discipline with which they behaved, although they were there in tens of thousands. Very, very large.
In the pandemic. Okay, so over to Suman Mukhopadyay.
I am Suman Mukhopadyay, speaking from Kolkata. Today we are remembering Soumitra Chatterjee, the legendary actor. What brought us very close was the production of King Lear in Kolkata, which we did in Bengali, entitled Raja Lear. And Soumitra played the title role, which was his dream role. He used to say that, I dreamt to play Hamlet, but I didn't get the time and nobody proposed me to play Hamlet. And then I realized I have crossed the age of playing Hamlet. So the only part left for me at this age is King Lear. So when the chance of producing King Lear came, he proposed my name. It was a great honor for me. And we did King Lear together. I was quite nervous at the beginning because, that he was already a cultural icon and one of the most revered actors and artists of our times. So how would he react to my direction? But it was only an hour. I realized that this is not the cultural icon which we know. He's an artist, an actor, who is dealing with his character. So, and I noticed the kind of dedication and commitment he had for theatre. And from the very first day, he was trying to in search of the character, and he was taking all kind of means to get to the character, to get Lear inside him. And if you see his script, he was always working on his lines, and he's doodling different sketches of Lear. He was quoting or referring to different poems, different paintings, different music, and different quotes from different referential materials. So I think that was his search. I was immensely amazed to see him in that kind of passion, and also we were working with young actors, and I never felt that even I was much younger to him that way, and I never felt that he was showing off his great huge position in the society or as an actor. He was so humble and completely focused. That's the one thing which I learned from him, that how can you be so focused. And another thing which I would say, that he was never overconfident. He is the most celebrated actor. He has traveled internationally. He is already one of the major actors on stage and in cinema, but still the humility is very important. And I remember the first night, the opening night of King Lear, when I went to congratulate him, best of luck, best of work, Soumitra. He held my hand and said that, Suman, I hope I can do it. That was the artistic uncertainty, the creative uncertainty that is the mark of a true artist. So I think that we rehearsed for 3 months, every day, 6 to 8 hours. After that, when he's asking this question, that means that his creative instinct is still alive. And I think that he questioned every movement of the play, every small things we did. And I think that this is one part of my creative exercise, my creative association with Soumitra. The other part is that every day we used to travel together from South Calcutta to North Calcutta, where we used to rehearse in Minerva Theatre. And those 3 hours of coming and going was an immense treasure which I hold inside me. The anecdotes, the things he told me about theatre, cinema, his co-actors, co-actresses, the directors he worked with, and his general cultural, understandings about politics. He is a plethora of things we discussed, and I still hold them very preciously. That's Soumitra Chatterjee for me. And as an actor, I can't believe what I have seen and experienced working with him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suman, for such a nice experience from the theatrical world. And we're just moving to the next experiences with the polymath, and moving to the literary works. We have pleasure to introduce one of the renowned poets, elocutionist, and lyricist of Bengal, India, and beyond. You all know him, Srijato, our very own Srijato. And I'd like to show you, certain stills of Srijato before bringing him on stage. Welcome, Srijato.
নমস্কার, থ্যাংক ইউ ফর হ্যাভিং মি।
আমাদের মধ্যে আসার জন্য সঙ্গীতাদি আছেন।
হ্যাঁ, সঙ্গীতাদি নমস্কার। হ্যাঁ,
কেমন আছো?
আমি ঠিকঠাক আছি। সব ঠিকঠাক ওখানে?
Everything is good.
যেরকম চলছে সব জায়গায় একই রকম। আমরা বলছিলাম সেলিব্রেশন অফ লাইফ, আমাদের এরকম যখন এই সেরকম সময় যায়, যখন থমকে দাঁড়ায়, এরকম টাইপের জিনিস যখন হয়, তখন এইগুলো তো আমাদের একটা আমাদের ফিরে দেখা। এবং সৌমিত্র বাবুর লাইফ, দ্য সেলিব্রেশন অফ লাইফ আমরা এখন থেকে করে আসছি। আর তোমার কাছে যাবো শ্রীজাত, অবভিয়াসলি তুমি তোমার যে মানে সৌমিত্রবাবুর একটা বিরাট জায়গা জুড়ে রয়েছে লিটারারি ওয়ার্কস, লেখনী এবং তার সঙ্গে যে পোয়েট্রি এবং রেসিটেশন। তোমার পার্সপেক্টিভ থেকে তুমি বলো তোমার যে
দেখো, আমার একটা যেমন আক্ষেপ আছে আমার বলতে, সেটা দ্বিধা নেই, সেটা আমি সৌমিত্র বাবুর সামনেই বলতাম, এখন তো আড়ালে আরোই বলতে পারি। সেটা হচ্ছে যে ওর তো শিল্পের নানা শাখায় একটা কৃতিত্বের জায়গা ছিল এবং প্রত্যেকটা শাখাতেই উনি শিখর স্পর্শ করেছেন, এমন নয় যে কিছু দূর গিয়ে ছেড়ে দিয়েছেন। এবার তাতে হয়েছে কি, ওর কবিতার যে পারিপার্শ্বিক, ওর কবিতার যে পরিসর, তার যে চর্চা, একটু আড়ালে চলে গিয়েছে। যা হয় যে কবিতা তো একটু চিরকালই মুখচোরা, এবং কবি সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় আরোই মুখচোরা ছিলেন। ফলে আমরা অভিনেতা সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়, নাট্যকার নির্দেশক সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়, এদের যত বেশি উদযাপন করেছি, সেলিব্রেট করেছি, কবি সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়কে আমরা ততটা সেলিব্রেট করিনি। ইভেন আবৃত্তিকার সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়, তারও একটা বিরাট খ্যাতি ছিল, বিরাট সমাদর ছিল। এসবের একটু আড়ালে কোথাও কবি সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় মাঝে মধ্যে চলে যেতেন। কিন্তু আমি যখনই ফিরে ওর কবিতা পড়ি, আগেও পড়েছি, আজও পড়ি, আমার সবসময় মনে হয় যে কবি হিসেবে কিন্তু উনি অন্যান্য ওর পারদর্শিতার কোথাও কোনো অংশে কম ছিলেন না। অভিনেতা সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় যতখানি প্রশংসার দাবি রাখেন, নাট্যকার নির্দেশক সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় যতখানি কুর্নিশের দাবি রাখেন, কবি সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় ঠিক ততটাই সমাদরের দাবি রাখতে পারেন। আমরা নিশ্চয়ই সময়ের সঙ্গে সঙ্গে এগিয়ে ওর কবিতার কাছে পৌঁছতে পারবো আরো বেশি করে যত দিন যাবে। এখন তো ফিরে ফিরে ওর কাজগুলো দেখা হবে আবার। মানুষ চলে গেলে আমার মনে হয় তার একটা দ্বিতীয় জন্ম শুরু হয়, যখন তারপরে তার কাজগুলো পড়ে থাকে। তো এবার আমাদের সময় এসেছে কেবল সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়ের কাজ দিয়ে তার কাছে পৌঁছানোর, কারণ মানুষটার কাছে আর পৌঁছানো যাবে না। আমার মনে হয় তার কবিতাকে এবার আরো বেশি করে পড়বার একটা প্রয়োজন এসছে, এবং আমরা অদূর ভবিষ্যতে তার কবিতার কাছাকাছি আরো বেশি করে পৌঁছতে পারবো বলে মনে হয়। অনির্বাণ,
খুব সুন্দর করে বললে শ্রীজাত, খুব সুন্দর কথা। এবং এটা বহু মানুষের ক্ষেত্রে বহুবার হয়েছে যে মানে মারা যাওয়ার পরে উই রিভিজিটেড এন্ড আবার করে নতুন করে ফিরে আসা। আমার মনে হয় জেনারেশন নেক্সটের কাছে খুব দরকারি, যে পরবর্তী প্রজন্ম যে এইখান থেকে যে শিক্ষা গ্রহণ করতে পারে এবং দে ক্যান মুভ ফরওয়ার্ড। তোমার একটা কবিতা, তুমি তো কবিতা লিখেছো এবং সৌমিত্র বাবুকে শ্রদ্ধা জ্ঞাপন করেও লিখেছো, সেখান থেকে দর্শকদের জন্য
আমি এই লেখাটাই পড়ি যেটা উনি চলে যাওয়ার পরের দিন আমি লিখেছিলাম। এই লেখাটার নাম দহন। সন্ধে নামছে তখন তোমার মুখে, আকাশে দূরের তারা চেনাচ্ছ তুমি, আমরা দেখছি আগুনের বন্ধুকে, জীবন ধ্রুবক, মৃত্যুই মরশুমি, এক জীবনের এতগুলো সংলাপ, সব ঠিকঠাক আদায়ের পর ছুটি, আমরা দেখছি শ্রান্ত পায়ের ছাপ, ভালোবাসা তবু দেখায়নি বিচ্যুতি। সন্ধে নামছে আবার তোমার কাছে, এবার তোমাকে নিয়ে যাবে বলে আশা, কজন মানুষ প্রবাহের মতো বাঁচে, চিনিয়ে দিচ্ছ দূরের তারার ভাষা। দাহ মুছে যাক, দহন জাগুক দাগে, মহিরুহ গেলে নত জানু হয় ঝড়ও, ছাই উড়ে যেতে এক মুহূর্ত লাগে, তোমার আগুন আকাশের চেয়ে বড়।
খুব সুন্দর, খুবই একদম থেকে লেখা এবং আন্তরিক, যে কি বলবো, সমস্ত অনুভূতি একসঙ্গে এলে এত সুন্দর করে। এটা আমার মনে হয় তুমি তো এটা লিখে প্রকাশ করেছো, আমার মনে হয় প্রতিটা বাঙালির, প্রতিটা ভারতীয়র এটা মনের কথা। এই যে মানে
আসলে এইটাই মজা কোথাও আমার মনে হয়, যে ওকে আমরা যারা একটু কাছ থেকে দেখবার যাদের সৌভাগ্য হয়েছে, তাদের কাছে উনি যেমন কাছের মানুষ, যারা কোনোদিন ওকে সামনে থেকে দেখেন উনি, তাদের কাছেও উনি একই রকম কাছের মানুষ। ওর অভিনয়ের মাধ্যমে, ওর মঞ্চের মাধ্যমে, ওর আবৃত্তির মাধ্যমে, কোনো না কোনো কাজের মাধ্যমে উনি এমন ভাবে বাঙালি জীবনের সঙ্গে জড়িয়ে গিয়েছেন যে আমাদের দিন কিন্তু সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় ছাড়া কাটে না। ফলে এটা খুব কম শিল্পীর ভাগ্যে হয়, এটা ওর কাজের দৌলতেই হয়েছে, উনি নিজেকে সেই জায়গায় প্রতিষ্ঠিত করতে পেরেছেন যে কোনো না কোনো ভাবে প্রত্যেক বাঙালির জীবনে উনি জড়িত এবং আজীবন জড়িত থাকবেন।
শ্রীজাত, অনেক ধন্যবাদ তোমার মূল্যবান সময় আমাদের সঙ্গে
না
দেওয়ার।
না না, আমারও খুব ভালো লাগলো, আমি সেশন শুনছিলাম এবং এই সেশনে কিছু বলতে আসাটাও ভারী কুণ্ঠার, কারণ সকলে এত সুন্দর অ্যানেকডোটস আনছেন এবং কথা বলছেন। বাট থ্যাংক ইউ ফর হ্যাভিং মি। খুব ভালো থেকো, ভালো হোক।
আর তুমি অন্য জায়গায় এই কথা বলেছো যে শ্রীকান্ত আর তোমার যে আড্ডা বা উইকলি হয় সেখানে
সেসব খুব মজার,
এবং তোমরা একসঙ্গে অনেক সময় কাটিয়েছো, which is independent of work. তোমরা যে একসঙ্গে কাজ কিছু করছিলে তা নয়, এবং এটাও একটা ভীষণ বড় পাওয়ার জায়গা যেখানে
মানে উনি আড্ডা দিতে ভীষণ ভীষণ ভালোবাসতেন, মানে হি অলওয়েজ ক্রেভড ফর আড্ডা। তো যখন কোনো কাজও হচ্ছে না আমাদের ফোন করে বলতেন, আচ্ছা শোনো একটু আড্ডার ব্যবস্থা করা যায় না? তো এভাবে আমরা অনেকবারই বসেছি। দ্য লাস্ট থিং আই উড অ্যাড, যে যখন লকডাউন শুরু হয়, এটাও আমি বলেছি এক দু জায়গায়, শ্রীকান্ত দাও হয়তো বলেছেন, তো তখন তো গাড়ি ঘোড়া একদম চলা বন্ধ হয়ে গেল এবং ওর মতো মানুষ যিনি একদম কর্মব্যস্ত থাকতে ভালোবাসেন সকাল থেকে রাত অব্দি, তিনি প্রথমটা গৃহবন্দী হয়ে পড়লেন। তো খুব উসখুস করছিলেন আড্ডার জন্য। তো সাধারণত কি হতো, আমি বা শ্রীকান্ত দা ওকে গাড়ি করে তুলে নিয়ে এসে কোথাও একটা বসতাম, কিন্তু সেটা আর করতে পারছি না কারণ গাড়ি চলাচল তো বন্ধ। উনি একদিন ফোন করে শ্রীকান্ত দাকেও বললেন এবং তারপর আমাকেও বললেন যে শোনো, এইভাবে তো আর পারা যায় না, তোমরা একটা পুলিশের গাড়ি ব্যবস্থা করতে পারো না? পুলিশের গাড়ি তো কেউ আটকাবে না, ওইতে করে চেপে এসে আমাকে তুলে নিয়ে যাবে, আড্ডা দিয়ে আবার নামিয়ে দিয়ে যাবে। তো he was like a child sometimes. তো এই আবদারটা এইটা একজন ছোট ছেলে বা মেয়েই করতে পারে হয়তো, এটা কিন্তু উনি অনায়াসে আমাদের বলে দিলেন। তো এই মানুষটার মধ্যে আসলে অনেক মানুষ লুকিয়েছিলেন, আমরা আরো আরো আবিষ্কার করব যত দিন যাবে।
একদম, অনেক ধন্যবাদ শ্রীজাত, ভালো থেকো।
ধন্যবাদ, ভালো থেকো, ভালো থেকো। হ্যাঁ, নমস্কার।
হ্যাঁ সঙ্গে দিদি, আফটার এতটা সুন্দর আর কি শ্রীজাতর একটা মানে সৃষ্টি এবং কি মনে যে ইমোশনস, আমরা সঙ্গীত দিদি এরপরে আমরা তাহলে কি নতুন লিগেসির দিকে যাচ্ছি তাহলে।
And we're moving to the sort of third section where we're going to talk about younger directors. And as we said at the beginning, Soumitra Da's work straddled 6 decades, a remarkable 6 decades. And he had this wonderful ability of being curious, of wanting to know more, of wanting to know what younger generations were thinking about. And he worked a lot with younger directors, so much so that at a certain point there were roles actually being written for him in mind. They were really author-backed roles for him. And I think the way Soumitra Da has explored old age, has explored the mind, the predicament of the middle class Bengali senior citizen, explored psychological facets of elderly people, of loneliness, of losing memory, of many other clinical conditions which he has brought in creatively into his work. I'm really concerned that whether we will have this sort of exposure to these conditions and to certain ideas specific to a certain age, which Soumitra Da was constantly bringing to us. For me, we have 2 directors here today. We're very delighted to have Suman Ghosh, with whom Soumitra Da has worked in 5 films. That's a wonderful range of films which Suman will tell us about. And we also have Atanu Ghosh, another younger director who will come in later. But at this moment, I know, Suman, you've been waiting for a long time. We have been running late, but also because there has been such extraordinary conversation between people. It's a pleasure to bring on Suman Ghosh, who is an academic and a celebrated economic mind, but also on the other hand, a very successful director in Bengal, and who has now stepped out to make his first Hindi film as well. Welcome, Suman.
Namaskar, Suman.
Yeah,
Hello,
can you hear me now?
Absolutely fine. Yeah, we just
Yeah,
made
so
a small
I'm
clip of
as
the audio
Shongita ji
creation.
knows, I'm in self-isolation in a hotel in Kolkata because I just came to Kolkata yesterday.
Acha,
So
acha.
I was just wary about the connection and all. So I'm happy that you can see and hear me
No,
now.
Sorry
we
for a
can
little
hear
bit of
you
delay,
fine.
but yeah, we are hearing you fine, and absolutely the
Okay.
technical sides
Okay.
are all good.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here with us, Shumon. And
thank you, Anirban and Soumitra
Thank
ji.
you.
Yeah.
I'd like to know about your association with Soumitra Chatterjee. You call him Soumitra Kaku, I think.
Right.
So you really are representative of the next generation of filmmakers who worked with him. Did you know him personally before you started work with him? How did you approach him with your first film? If you could share a bit of that.
Yeah. So uh, the first time as you told to the audience also, so I am an academic, and when I was doing my PhD in economics actually in the US, when I was harboring my wish to make films and stuff, so I had been an observer in one of his very acclaimed films by Gautam Ghosh, who was here in this thing called Dekha. That was in 2000 when I was still a student, and I had come to be on the sets of Dekha and just to observe Gautam Ghosh directing, and there I remember first I met him, and I had told Soumitra Kaku. So of course, for any Bengali boy, first seeing Soumitra Chatterjee was a big jolt in a sense. The awe and the memories and everything. Like we grew up watching his films, and I didn't have the courage initially to approach him. Also, like, what will I say? I'm just a student who wants to do a film someday, and I distinctly remember the first interaction which I had with him was after a take. Till then I didn't have the courage to go and talk to him also. So after a take, so he did couple of takes and one shot. So after it was over, then I went and told him that I really loved this performance which you did, whatever. So remember, he has no clue who I am and anything. He said that keno bhalo laglo jano. Then I said that no, I just, like, from the previous take I thought that this take was something magical happened. Then he said, which subsequently he has told in the everywhere, people know about this anecdote. He said that কেন ভালো লাগলো আমি তোমায় বলছি আমার মনে হয় যা, and he was very humble that way. He said that আমাকে আমার গুরু শিশির ভাদুরীর কথা বলছিলেন, আমাকে আমার গুরু শিশির ভাদুরী বলেছিলেন যে অভিনয়ে it is all about the pause. তুমি কতটা পজ দিচ্ছ, কোথায় পজ, where you are giving the pause, how long you are taking the pause. That cadence of pause is basically acting, at least film acting. So in this take which you liked so much, that cadence I also thought that it was ideal in that sense, and hence তোমার এত ভালো লাগলো আমার মনে হয় এটা. So that kept me thinking, and that summarizes the subsequent interactions which I had over 15 years now. Have actually, I still don't want to say had, over 15 years now, where anything he will go to the basics. And ধরো একটা ছবি আমি বললাম যে এই ফিল্মটা দারুণ লাগলো, and he will try to go into the depths of why you liked it, why you did not like it, and those kind of things. So just এই টেকটা খুব ভালো, তোমার অভিনয়টা খুব ভালো লাগলো, then it was an learning for me also, that any performance or a film or whatever, try to go deep into why, and and subsequently তারপরে I kept in touch with him, and at one point when I wrote Padokkhep, I wanted him to play the main protagonist. I approached him. That was 5 years later, in 2005, after this incident which I said, and he loved the script. He had minor comments and stuff, and that's how our journey began with Padokkhep. So since you asked me the very first interactions, this was how with that Shishir Bhaduri comment, that was his interaction with me, how it started. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Padokkhep was the award-winning film after so many films over there. So obviously, it's
That's
a big,
right.
big connection with you.
Yes.
Yeah. True.
And subsequently, when you made your later films, particularly films like Peace Haven, did you have him in mind when you wrote those parts?
Yes, definitely. You know, uh, in fact, I have probably made 8 Bengali films, and he has been in 5 of them. And absolutely, P7. Only one film where I did not have him in mind was Nobel Chor, where Mithun Chakrabarti was the main protagonist. But I could not have the, so making a film with him is basically spending, like Lalda was saying, Suman Mukhopadyay was saying, his interactions in the car,
Yeah.
and so just imagine if this is prolonged for 1 month of shoot, just going out in outdoors with him. So that was a big lure of casting him, and I knew that by that time I had hooked him, in the sense that we had developed a relationship, which he also thought me as his son. And so I requested him to do Nobel Joe. But other roles, like even in Boshu Poribar and P7, and as you also rightly said while introducing us, the new generation, so-called me, Otonuda, who have exploited him so much, a lot of the films would not have happened. So I was telling Rina, the Aparna Sen, that Boshu Poribare, the main character which Soumitra plays, if he was not there, I couldn't have done the movie. Similarly, Podokhep and Moyurakhi, Otonuda's
Oh,
film 2 years back, I don't
absolutely.
think the film would have happened if he was not there. So it
Yeah,
is such a colossal loss for
yeah,
for our generation,
Hmm.
that a lot of films will not be made.
Me
So
too.
I definitely wrote him in mind, and if he was not there, probably I would have thought of another some other film. And also, I want to mention, because in these discussions I find it missing, is that people talk about the films of me and Otonuda, and of the later or even Onik Dotto's latest film Borun Baur Bondhu.
Purunor Bondhu,
But
huh?
Soumitra Kaku's in contribution to another genre of films, which, for example, Bela Sheshe or Posto,
Hmm.
these were super hit films.
Yeah.
Maybe you can say that aesthetically or artistically it is not that level, but that's a subjective
Yeah,
differentiation.
Hmm.
sure.
But from the Bengali film industry world, where
It's a
I
big
have
thing.
been for 15 years now, that commercial aspect of Shiva Prasad Nandita's films, where he regularly was there, not only these two, but there are others also. He did Bela
Prakton, huh?
Shuru, another
Prakton. Yeah,
প্রাক্তনের ছোট রোল ছিল, বাট
yeah, but
আই এম
still he
সেইং
was
দ্যাট
there. Yeah.
মেইন প্রোটাগনিস্ট হিসেবে দুটো ছবিতে,
Bela
এবং
Sheshe, Bela Shuru.
another of Shibu's film, Shibu Nandita's film Bela Shuru, is
Bela
was
Shuru.
released after. So I just wanted to stress that not only so-called his contribution to art, what people say artistic films, like I would credit Otonuda a lot because of that. He Rup Kathanay and things like that. But parallelly, these films like Posto and Bela Sheshe,
Yeah,
it says a lot about his contributions in a wholesome way. The canvas of his contributions to Bengali cinema, even at 85 years of age, and all these films which I'm saying, he did it in the last 5 years.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
all 80
Yeah,
plus.
so
Yeah,
it's actually, this straddling both mainstream cinema, commercial cinema, and art house cinema. He's been doing that
Right.
right from the beginning. But
absolutely.
with,
Right.
as you said, for an actor past his 80th year, for people
Exactly.
to just rush and flock to the theaters and have houseful shows because it was
Exactly.
Shobita in the film. And I know that every time I'm in Kolkata, my mother, who is now past 80, it's
Mm.
very easy for me to just say cholo, because we're going to go see a film by Soumitra. And my mother was his junior at the university, and she remembers what an electrifying presence his was at the coffee house where he presided over the addas and had political arguments and poetry. So
Right.
that's something she remembers from the early years. So it's that entire generation who would go and see, not because of fanhood, but to
Sure.
see excellence in work, to
Of
see
course.
excellence in narrative. When we took them to Robindra Sadan, or even in our stage productions, when Soumitra was reading, and sometimes he's also read for my music albums, for our music albums. He's been here. We've done work with him in London, in Birmingham, at Sampad. It's that excellence that people are
Sure.
in search for. It's
And Shongita Di, since I just came to Kolkata yesterday, a couple of things I'm missing. For example, again, we are talking about these films, but he did a lot of other films also, which probably nobody will mention in. But when I came to Kolkata, you also have seen posters all over the place of his face, right? In nondescript films also, which will not be mentioned. So in a sense, he was there for Kolkata. So we are talking about his cinema or theater contribution, but as you rightly said, culturally and forget, I would say even above that, not even culturally, as a Bengali who was hovering around our space so much. Now,
Yeah.
when I come to Kolkata, I just am missing that. I'm not seeing. Still, there are faces, but now it's a pandemic thing. But that was a continuous presence
Yes.
of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Like you would have political leaders' faces being recognized.
Exactly.
Soumitra would always be there
Exactly.
on posters.
Yeah, yeah.
I think even at this moment, because of your straddling North America and India quite effortlessly, I'm sure there's a lot of effort there, but seems apparently
Mhm.
effortlessly. But I'd just like to remind the audience here also about the fact that there was his connection with European filmmakers, with American filmmakers, which again many people don't know about. And he did films. In fact, he co-starred with Hugh Grant, which might excite a lot of young people. There were films like La Nuit Bengal, Bengal Nights. There was The Shadows
Bengal
That
Night.
Tribes. There was Catherine Birch's documentary called Gach or The Tree, which was made on him. And I remember he's talked about this many quite often, Soumitra, that his father would tell him that grow up to be like a large tree where you also bear fruit and you
Nehru.
shade. ময়ূর কথাটা শ্রীজাত বারবার বলেছে, অনেকেই বলেছে, this idea that he's this great banyan tree under whose shade many others have been nurtured. So it's evoking all those other filmmakers from different countries who have worked.
Shomita, the another thing which I want to mention is about the new generation and what he would give us as his heritage, or apart from his work in theater and films and other poetry or his paintings now and everything. One thing which I think should be imbibed a lot by the younger generation is something called I would say an ethical reflex of an artist. And this term I borrowed. I was listening to a speech by Gayatri Spivak recently where she mentions this term, and I find it so interesting, this ethical reflex, where even after 80 he has stood politically, and as the reflex I was saying, with a lot of issues, and these were independent of party lines. Just to give you an example, when Onik Dotto's film couple of years back was stopped by the TMC government and there was a hue and cry, so he and Aparna Sen went to the streets to protest that. None of the younger generation actors actually had the courage to come and protest. And remember, Soumitra was going through extreme turmoil in his personal life because of Rono's accident. But throughout, whatever his situation, this comes out of a reflex of an artist, which we saw of older generations like Shoil Chaudhary, Utpal Datto, and these people, and that is dwindling very much. And not only Onik Dotto's film. When my documentary on Amartya Sen was, it fell into some problems with the censors and all. Soumitra, who went out and gave statements on the media and the press, and of course, famously or infamously, we had those 49 list of people who wrote to the prime minister earlier this year, where he didn't have to be involved in all this at this age, but he regularly kept that. And that artist with an E should be emphasized, and the new generation also should learn that he at this age he continuously did that. And that is a big heritage which I think we should, as younger generation, should try to imbibe and hold some aspect of Soumitra Chatterjee as an artist.
Yeah. And we haven't talked about his political thinking, his left leanings all the time. He was a leftist leaning artist without really having to be actively involved in political parties. And he also wrote in.
I can't hear you properly, Shongitadi.
You can't hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
I think the sound
disturbance is happening.
Okay. Maybe, but I can hear you properly.
You can hear me okay?
I'm hearing you properly. Yeah, absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just talking about his one of his last writings in Ganashokti last September, when he actually brought up this question, saying, "What is all this fuss about Ram? We have grown up with Ram. We know who Ram is. What is this extra fuss about that?" And there were lots of other related questions to that. But what I'm saying is that without really swinging into political party affiliations, he held his values very strongly, and they were leftist leaning intellectual values, and he has taken to the street and been an activist whenever it's been important, so that the conscience that you talk about, or the ethics that you talk about, is so much part of being an artist of that stature.
So I think sound. Yeah. Anyway, I think while Suman is here, we can see the works of Atanu as well. Okay, Shangitadi, can you hear me? Is it all right?
Yes, I can.
Sure. So for the viewers,
I can't hear you, but thank you so much for inviting me, and I could exchange these comments. I think I'm so sorry because of the I was scared that I cannot contact you also.
No, we're glad we got you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Suman. Yeah, thank you. So, as Shumon mentioned as well, that Atanu Ghosh needs no introduction, and with the film Moirakhi, that I think everyone has found what Shongitadi said, the elder generation over there, and the father-son relationship. So let's see the clip of Atanu. The Atanu couldn't actually manage to join over there. He was supposed to join here, but let's see the clip.
বাবা কি হলো? ভায়োলিনটা নামিয়ে রাখলাম।
নমস্কার। আমরা এমন একটা অন্ধকার, আদর্শহীন, প্রেরণাহীন সময়ের মধ্যে দিয়ে যাচ্ছি। সৌমিত্র কাকু সেখানে আমাদের জন্য আলোর মতো ছিলেন, খুব জ্বলজ্বলে একটা আলো, জ্ঞানের আলো, বোধের আলো, সৃজনশীলতার আলো। এবং সেই আলো নিভে যাওয়ায় এই যে অসীম শূন্যতায় আমরা ডুবে গেছি, আমি সত্যিই জানি না এই শূন্যতা ঘেরাটোপ থেকে আমরা আদৌ কোনোদিন বেরোতে পারবো কিনা। কারণ এই মাপের একজন মানুষ তো সচরাচর দেখা যায় না। একাধারে অভিনেতা, কবি, নাট্যকার, আবৃত্তিকার, চিত্রশিল্পী, আবার এইসবের একেবারে বাইরে একজন শিক্ষক, একজন চিন্তক, দার্শনিক, আরও কত কিছু। আমরা সত্যিই ভাগ্যবান যে এরকম একজন মানুষকে এত কাছ থেকে দেখলাম, তার সঙ্গে কাজ করার সুযোগ পেলাম। আমি ওর সঙ্গে 4টে পূর্ণদৈর্ঘ্যের ছবি করার সুযোগ পেয়েছি। অংশুমানের ছবি রূপকথা নয়, ময়ূরাক্ষী এবং 72 ঘণ্টা, এবং তার আগেও বেশ কয়েকটা টেলিফিল্ম। কিন্তু ময়ূরাক্ষী করার সময় আমি ওকে যেন নতুন করে আবিষ্কার করলাম। এই ছবির স্ক্রিপ্ট যেদিন ওকে শোনানোর কথা ছিল, তার ঠিক 4 দিন আগে ওর নাতির ভয়াবহ দুর্ঘটনা ঘটেছে। তাই আমি স্বভাবতই ইতস্তত করছিলাম যে ওই সময় স্ক্রিপ্ট নিয়ে আলোচনা করাটা ঠিক হবে কিনা। কিন্তু যেদিন ওর সঙ্গে আমার অ্যাপয়েন্টমেন্ট ছিল, তার আগের দিন রাত্রিরে উনি নিজেই ফোন করলেন, করে বললেন, না তুমি এসো, কাল যেমন তোমার আসার কথা তুমি এসো। এবং পরের দিন আমি গেলাম, উনি স্ক্রিপ্ট শুনলেন, এই বিষয়ে ওর একটা ভারী মজার অভ্যাস ছিল। অনেকেই জানেন সে কথা। যে কোনো স্ক্রিপ্ট শুনতে শুনতে উনি ছবি আঁকতেন, এবং এই যে ছবি আঁকাটা, এইটা আসলে ওর একটা কনসেন্ট্রেশনের একটা পদ্ধতি ছিল। আমায় প্রথমবারই বলেছিলেন যে মনোযোগ দিচ্ছি না এমন ভেবে বসো না, কিন্তু আসলে আরও বেশি মনটাকে জড়ো করছি বলেই কিন্তু ছবিটা আঁকছি। এবং অদ্ভুত হচ্ছে যে স্ক্রিপ্ট শোনানো যখন শেষ হতো এবং উনি ওর আঁকা ছবিটা তুলে দেখাতেন, অদ্ভুতভাবে সেটা যেন একেবারে ওই মূল বিষয়ের একটা প্রতিচ্ছবি হয়ে উঠত। এই কথাটা উনি প্রায়ই বলতেন যে চরিত্রের সঙ্গে গভীর একটা সম্পর্ক স্থাপন করার ক্ষেত্রে এই ছবিটাই যেন ছিল প্রথম ধাপ। তবে ময়ূরাক্ষীর স্ক্রিপ্ট যেদিন আমি শোনাই, সেদিন তার মনের মধ্যে যে ঝড় বয়ে চলছিল, তার ফলে সেদিন ছবিটা আঁকতে পারেননি, চুপ করে শুনছিলেন। পড়া শেষ হয়ে যেতে আমায় বললেন যে এই গল্পটা তো অনেকটাই তোমার আর তোমার বাবার গল্প, একদিন তোমার বাবার বিষয় শুনব। তো কয়েকদিন পরে একদিন আমি অনেকক্ষণ ধরে আমার বৈজ্ঞানিক বাবা, তার বিভিন্ন বিষয়ে আগ্রহ, তার সাথে এই গল্পের সংযোগের জায়গাগুলো কোনটা, সেই সমীকরণগুলো, এবং এইগুলো সব ওকে বললাম। এবং ভাবতে খুব অবাক লাগে যে একজন অভিনেতা তার নিজের চরিত্রকে জীবন্ত করতে কতটা গভীরে গিয়ে, কত ভিন্ন পদ্ধতির প্রয়োগ করে ভাবনার নানান স্তর তৈরি করতে পারেন। এটা শুধু হয়তো ওর পক্ষেই সম্ভব ছিল। ময়ূরাক্ষী ছবি দেশ বিদেশে যত জায়গায় দেখানো হয়েছে, সবাই বলেছেন যে সৌমিত্র কাকু আর সুশোভনকে আলাদা করা যায়নি, এবং এক অসীম বিশ্বাসযোগ্যতার জায়গা উনি যে তৈরি করেছিলেন। কত মানুষকে আমি দেখেছি হলে বসে আকুল হয়ে কাঁদতে। একবার একটা সাক্ষাৎকারে আমায় বলেছিলেন যে জানো তো, সিনেমার অভিনয় সেখানেই সার্থক যেখানে মিনিমাম স্ট্রোকে ম্যাক্সিমাম এফেক্ট তৈরি করা যায়। এটা খুব ঠিক কথা। একটা খুব সরু একটা তুলির আঁচড় দিয়ে চরিত্রের সাথে এমন একটা আত্মিক সম্পর্ক স্থাপন করতেন, সেটা চিরস্মরণীয় হয়ে থাকত।
Thank you very much for a very, very nice, the anecdote, and minimal strokes, maximal effects. So এর থেকে মানে সৌমিত্র বাবু এটার পুরো একটা মানে আমি বলবো জ্বলন্ত উদাহরণ। মানে লট অফ এরিয়াস এই মিনিমাম স্ট্রোক দিয়ে ম্যাক্সিমাম এফেক্টস কে আনা, সেটা একটা বিরাট ব্যাপার। সঙ্গীতা জি, আমার মনে হয় আমরা তোমাদের যে প্রোডাকশন এতে আছে, আমরা যখন এই লিগেসিতেই রয়েছি ফর দ্য নেক্সট জেনারেশন ডিরেক্টর্স, তোমাদের বৈঠক ইউকে থেকে সৌমিত্র বাবু যেটা করেছেন ঋতুপর্ণ ঘোষের উদ্দেশ্যে, আমরা সেখানে তুমি একটু যদি বলো তাহলে আমরা we can play that one as well.
হ্যাঁ, I'd like to show you a little excerpt. It's actually an edited excerpt from my documentary Bird of Dusk, Shondir Pakhi, which was made as a tribute to Rituparno Ghosh, with whom I've had many, many years of working association. Soumitra was not keeping well, and as many of you knew, that he was only able to spend 3 or 4 hours, shooting hours in the studio in the last few years. And it was in this situation that I requested him to be part of the documentary. And despite not being at his fittest health condition, he immediately agreed, and he came home to do this long interview. He also then went to the recording studios to read certain excerpts from Ritu's first person. This was such a valuable experience for me and for my younger unit to just be able to sit and listen to him recount his association with Ritu, why he thought younger people had to pick up the mantle, the cultural mantle, the literary mantle, to take things forward, and to also talk about his own role in the film Ashok, which Ritu directed him in. So let's just see a short excerpt. It's been edited by Shubhajit Prasad.
সত্যি যদি প্রিয় নারী বলে কাউকে ভালোবাসি, বারবার ফিরতে ইচ্ছে করে যার কাছে, যিনি সেই কবির মানসীর মতো, যে কবি কোনো একদিন কবিতার পঞ্চস্বরে বর দিয়েছিলেন আমার শহরকে। কলকাতা একদিন কল্লোলিনী তিলোত্তমা হবে।
Such a nice talk, beautifully done. Shongidi, thank you very much. এটার জন্য আর এত সুন্দর আর ভয়েসটা তো যতবারই আমরা শুনি অবভিয়াসলি একটা অন্য মাত্রা দেয় এখানে। আমরা এখান থেকেই তাহলে ডিরেক্টলি চলে যাই আমাদের নেক্সট সেকশনে লিটারারি ওয়ার্কসে যেখানে আমরা আছি। তো I have a privilege to introduce before you librarian, educationist, Satyajit Ray researcher, and the author of several books, As you can see, the Satyajit Ray's books and in Ekhon, which was the little magazine, and that was published from 61 to 79. And he was co-author and several publications in Ekhon. And we are very privileged to have Debashis Mukhopadyay with us.
নমস্কার
নমস্কার দেবাশিস দা, সঙ্গীতা দি আছেন এখানে।
নমস্কার সঙ্গীতা দি নমস্কার।
নমস্কার।
অনেক ধন্যবাদ দেবাশিস দা, আজকে তোমার মূল্যবান সময় দেওয়ার জন্য। আমাদের মানে বিভিন্ন ইমোশনস এর জন্য একটুখানি ডিলে হতে হচ্ছে, বাট সবারই যেটা মনের ভেতর থেকে যেগুলো আর কি একদম অন্তরের যে কথাগুলো বেরিয়ে আসছে, সেটা আমাদের মনে হয় যে সেটা আমাদের সমৃদ্ধ করছে। এবং তোমার কাছ থেকে আমি যেটা জেনে নেব যে তোমার যে এক্সপিরিয়েন্স, তোমার যে অভিজ্ঞতা এক্ষণের সময় থেকে শুরু করে, তো অবশ্যই সত্যজিৎ রায়ের থেকে শুরু, এবং তারপরে সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়ের সঙ্গে এক্ষণের সূত্রে যে পাবলিকেশনের যে অভিজ্ঞতা, সেটা সম্বন্ধে তুমি যদি আমাদের কিছু বলো।
হ্যাঁ, প্রথমে আপনাদের ধন্যবাদ এবং কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাচ্ছি এরকম একটা অনুষ্ঠানে আমাকে বলার সুযোগ দেওয়ার জন্য। এবং আমি যে শুনছিলাম যে কথাগুলো, সত্যি বলছি, আন্তরিকভাবে বলছি, এত ঋদ্ধ হচ্ছিলাম এবং কিছু কিছু বিষয়ের সঙ্গে নিজেকে বিভিন্নভাবেই তো আমি এই ব্যাপারগুলোর সঙ্গে একটু জড়িয়েও ছিলাম, ফলে ভীষণ ভালো লাগছিল। এবং তাদের নিজের অভিজ্ঞতা এত সুন্দরভাবে বলছিলেন এবং সেখানে একটু অস্বস্তি হচ্ছিল যে আমি এদের মধ্যে কি বলবো। কিন্তু একটা জিনিস আমি বুঝতে পারছিলাম, যেটা যে আজকে যে সৌমিত্রকে নিয়ে, যে সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়কে নিয়ে যে আলোচনাটা হচ্ছে, এর কারণটা কিন্তু শুধু যে অভিনেতা তা তো নয়। আসলে ওনার যে জীবন বোধ এবং এই যে ওনার যে জীবনের যে অভিজ্ঞতা, সেটাকে তো উনি অভিনয়ের সঙ্গে একদম গভীরে সঞ্চারিত করেছিলেন। এবং আর একটা জিনিস আমার খুব বুঝতে পারি, যে এই যে ব্যাপারটা হয়েছিল কিন্তু ওনার বই পড়ে, বই লিখে এবং বইয়ের বিষয়কে আত্মস্থ করে। এবং সত্যজিৎ রায়ের যে উনি প্রিয় হয়ে উঠেছিলেন, তার অন্যতম কারণ কিন্তু হচ্ছে এই বই। এবং উনি উনি আপনি জানেন যে অপুর সংসারের আগে থেকে ওনার আলাপ, উনি তো অপরাজিতের জন্য উনি গিয়েছিলেন, সেখানে হয়নি, কিন্তু সত্যজিৎ রায় বলেছিলেন তুমি এসো। এবং ওনার সঙ্গে যে আলোচনা হতো সেটা হচ্ছে বই নিয়ে। বা যখন সত্যজিৎ রায় জানতে পারলেন যে উনি শিশির কুমার ভাদুরীর সঙ্গে অভিনয় করেছেন, তার সঙ্গে একটু হৃদ্যতা আছে, উনি জানতে চাইতেন সত্যজিৎ রায় যে শিশির কুমার ভাদুরী কি কি বই পড়তেন, তোমার সঙ্গে কি নিয়ে আলোচনা হতো। আবার আর একটা দিক দিয়ে, যে শুধু বই পড়া বলতেও ঠিক শুধু বই পড়ে নয়, সেটাও নয়। মানে ধরুন, আমি যতটুকু দেখেছি বা ওনার যা লেখা পড়েছি, সেটা হচ্ছে যে সমকালীন সাহিত্য, নাটক, রাজনীতি, শিল্পকলা এবং অবশ্যই ফিল্ম, এই সব কিছুকেই উনি আত্মস্থ করতে চাইতেন। এবং সেটাই কিন্তু, এই সমস্ত কিছুটাই কিন্তু তার কবিতা, তার নাটক, তার অভিনয়, তার প্রবন্ধ লেখা, তার নাট্য পরিচালনা এবং এক্ষণ পত্রিকার যে সম্পাদনা, সেই সমস্ত নিয়েই কিন্তু এই সবগুলো হতো। কোথাও উনি নিজেকে কখনো, ওই যেটা বলছিলেন, অতনুবাবু বললেন বা আরো সবাই বললেন, আমার মনে আছে আমি আজকাল পত্রিকার সঙ্গে জড়িয়েছিলাম, এই যখন অযোধ্যায় যখন মন্দির ভাঙার যে ব্যাপারটা হচ্ছে, উনি আজকালের দুটি প্রবন্ধ লিখেছিলেন। সে মারাত্মক, তার যে ক্রোধ, তাতে তিনি কোথাও তার কোনো খামতি রাখেননি। ফলে সব সময় দেখেছি কিন্তু উনি সব কিছুর সঙ্গে কিন্তু নিজেকে জড়িয়ে নিয়ে তার যাপন চর্চাটা চলতো। এবং এক্ষণের কথা যখন বলতে আসে, দেখুন, এক্ষণের আগেও উনি ছিলেন কলেজ জীবন থেকে উনি কবিতা লিখতেন। এবং ওনার যে বন্ধু সার্কেলটা ছিল, সেটা কলেজ এবং পরে যখন ইউনিভার্সিটিতে ভর্তি হলেন, সেই বন্ধু কারা কারা ছিল? সুধীর চক্রবর্তী, বিখ্যাত লেখক; শিশির কুমার দাস, যিনি হিস্ট্রি অফ ইন্ডিয়ান লিটারেচার লিখেছেন, একটা বিরাট বিরাট কাজ। তারপর অমিতাভ দাশগুপ্ত, বিখ্যাত কবি; অশোক পালিত কবি; গগন দত্ত, যার স্ত্রী হচ্ছে কৃষ্ণা দত্ত, অ্যান্ড্রু রবিনসনের যৌথ লেখক হিসেবে যিনি রবীন্দ্রনাথের জীবনী লিখেছিলেন। শ্যামল রায়চৌধুরী, আপনাদের ওখানকার বিখ্যাত ডাক্তার, কিন্তু উনিও প্রবন্ধ এবং কবিতা লিখতেন। এবং আরেকজন হচ্ছে নির্মাল্য আচার্য, এক্ষণের সহ সম্পাদক। এই সবাই তখন কিছু না কিছু লিখছেন লিটল ম্যাগাজিনে, এবং এদের খুব ইচ্ছে যে আমাদের যে আমরা যা লিখি তার তো একটা প্রকাশের জায়গা দরকার, আমরা কেন অন্য জায়গায় রিকোয়েস্ট করতে যাব। এই মানসিকতা থেকেই কিন্তু ওদের একটা পত্রিকা করবার ভাবনাটা এসছিল, কিন্তু সেটা হয়নি। তারপরে ইউনিভার্সিটি তো কালটা চলে গেল। সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় রেডিওতে কাজ করলেন, নির্মাল্য আচার্য আশুতোষ কলেজে পড়াতে শুরু করলেন, কিন্তু এই ভাবনাটা কিন্তু ওদের মনের মধ্যে ছিল। কফি হাউসে আড্ডা মারতেন এবং সেখানে কিন্তু মাঝে মাঝেই বলতেন একটা কিছু করতে হবে, পত্রিকাটা বার করতেই হবে। এবং 1961 সাল, এই সময়টা ভীষণ ইম্পর্টেন্ট। 61 সাল হচ্ছে রবীন্দ্র শতবর্ষ বছর, 1961। এবং তখন গোটা পশ্চিম বাংলা জুড়ে একটা সাহিত্যে, একটা সংস্কৃতির একটা উজ্জীবন জেগে উঠেছিল। ফলে ওই বছরটাতেই ওরা ঠিক করে ফেললেন যে আর দেরি নয়, এবার আমাদের একটা পত্রিকা করতে হবে। কিন্তু পত্রিকাটা করতে হবে কিরম? এবং সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়ের খুব ইচ্ছে ছিল পত্রিকাটা হবে পরিচয়ের মতো। মানে পরিচয় মানেই হচ্ছে কিন্তু তখন বামপন্থী কাগজ হিসেবে বিখ্যাত, এবং পরিচয় বিষ্ণুদে ছিলেন, সুভাষ মুখোপাধ্যায় ছিলেন, এরা সবাই ছিলেন, সুধীন দত্ত ছিলেন। কিন্তু একটা জিনিস আমার খুব মনে হয় যে সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় এবং অপুর সংসার, এই যে অপুর সংসার থেকে উনি বিখ্যাত হলেন এবং অসাধারণ অভিনয় করলেন, তার একটা কারণ হচ্ছে যে দুজনেই কিন্তু বামপন্থী। ব্যক্তিগত জীবনে সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় এবং অপুও, অপুর সংসারের অপু। কারণ অপুর ঘরের মধ্যে গোর্কির ছবি টাঙানো থাকে। অপু কথা বলে যে আমি চাকরি করব না, কারণ দস্তয়েভস্কি এরা তো চাকরি করেনি। অপুর বন্ধু যখন রেস্তোরাঁয় খেতে খেতে বলছেন যে কিরে তুই রেলের চাকরিটা নিলি না কেন, তাতে অপু উত্তর দিচ্ছে যে ওরা স্ট্রাইকারদের জায়গায় লোক নিচ্ছিল। তাহলে বুঝতে পারছেন এই দুজনের মানসিকতা এমন এক হয়ে গেছিল যে সৌমিত্র তার পুরোটাই কিন্তু অপুর মধ্যে কিন্তু সঞ্চারিত করতে পেরেছে। এবং 61 সালে যখন কথা হলো যে আমরা পত্রিকাটা বার করব, তখন ওরা মোটামুটি একটা ঠিকঠাক করে নিলেন যে কি কি হতে পারে, একটা নামও ঠিক করলেন। এবং তখন দেখুন 1961 সাল, তখন সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় অপুর সংসার, দেবী, ঝিন্দের বন্দি, ক্ষুদিত পাষাণ, আর একটা হচ্ছে আপনার কমার্শিয়াল ছবির মধ্যে স্বরলিপি, অশোক সেনের ছবি রিলিজ করে গেছে। সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় তখন বিখ্যাত, তখনও কিন্তু উনি কফি হাউসে এসে কিন্তু আড্ডা মারছেন এবং এই নিয়ে আলোচনা করছেন। সত্যজিতের প্রিয় ভাজন। ফলে সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় নির্মাল্যবাবুকে বললেন, নির্মাল্যবাবুই প্রস্তাবটা দিলেন আমরা পত্রিকাটা বার করব, এবং আমি করব একটাই শর্তে, যদি তুই সম্পাদক, যুগ্ম সম্পাদক হিসেবে থাকিস, নচেত নয়। সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় চাননি কিন্তু যে উনি সম্পাদক হবে, বলে আমি তো পেছন থেকে থাকছি, তুই সম্পাদক হ, নির্মাল্যবাবুকে বলেছিলেন। তখন দীপা চট্টোপাধ্যায় বলেছিলেন, ওনার স্ত্রী তখন বিয়ে হয়ে গেছে, যে তোমার তো অনেক দিনের ইচ্ছে একটা পত্রিকা বার করা, তাহলে তুমি থাকছো না কেন? উনি রাজি হলেন এবং বললেন ঠিক আছে, তাহলে আমরা প্রচ্ছদের জন্য সত্যজিৎ রায়ের কাছে যাই। এবং সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় গেলেন, প্রচ্ছদের কথা বললেন, পুরো পরিকল্পনাটা বললেন কি ধরনের পত্রিকা হবে। তখন সত্যজিৎ রায় জিজ্ঞেস করলেন কি নাম রেখেছো? ওরা যে নামটা রেখেছিল সেটা খুব একটা পছন্দ হয়নি সত্যজিৎ রায়। তা এটার কথা বলছি পরে। তা তখন সত্যজিৎ রায়কে বললেন তাহলে আপনি একটা নাম ঠিক করে দিন, এটা হচ্ছে এক্ষণের প্রথম সংখ্যা, তা নাম ঠিক করে দিন। তা তখন বললেন তুমি কালকে এসো। কালকে যেতেই দেখা গেল যে 8টা নাম লেখা আছে, তাতে একদম প্রথমে উনি 8টা, সত্যজিৎ রায় 8টা নাম ঠিক করেছেন, কিন্তু একদম প্রথম নামটা হচ্ছে এক্ষণ। এক্ষণ নামটাই হলো, এবং বললেন ঠিক আছে আমি প্রচ্ছদ করে দেবো। শুধু তাই নয়, সত্যজিৎ রায়ের সঙ্গে ওনার তো মাঝে মাঝে নানা বিষয় আলোচনা হতো।
হ্যাঁ।
থাকবে, কারা কারা লিখবে, সে ব্যাপারেও কিন্তু সত্যজিৎ রায় তাদের অসংখ্য অসংখ্য মানে বেশ কিছু বাকের নাম, যেমন ধরুন চঞ্চল চট্টোপাধ্যায়, কমল কুমার মজুমদার, এমনকি ডেভিড ম্যাককাচন। সত্যজিৎ রায় বলেছিলেন তোমরা ডেভিড ম্যাককাচনের লেখা অনুবাদ করে ছাপবে। উনি আর্কিওলজিক্যাল টেরাকোটা মন্দিরের উপরে লিখেছিলেন। ফলে সত্যজিৎ রায়ের সঙ্গে এক্ষণ সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়, তখন কিন্তু নির্মাল্যবাবুর সঙ্গে সত্যজিৎ রায়ের কোনো যোগাযোগই নেই, আলাপই নেই, কিন্তু চেনেনি না। ইনফ্যাক্ট সমস্তটা কিন্তু সত্যজিৎ রায় এবং সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়ের সঙ্গে পারস্পরিক আস্থাভাজন, এবং এই আস্থাটার উপর বেশ করেই কিন্তু এই আলোচনাগুলো হতো। এবং সবচেয়ে ইম্পর্টেন্ট কথা হচ্ছে যে সত্যজিৎ রায়ের বেশ কিছু গুরুত্বপূর্ণ লেখা এই পত্রিকাতে ছাপা হয়েছে। আর একটা হচ্ছে একটা সাহিত্য পত্রিকা, একটা লিটারারি ম্যাগাজিন, সেই পত্রিকাতে প্রথম কিন্তু একটি ছবির চিত্রনাট্য প্রকাশ পাচ্ছে, কাপুরুষ।
কাপুরুষ অরণ্যের দিনরাত্রি
অনেক
এগুলো
পরে, অনেক পরে, ওটা অনেক পরে, কিন্তু কাপুরুষ। এবং তখন একটা বিরাট হইচই পড়ে গেছিল যে কেন সাহিত্য পত্রিকাতে ফিল্মের চিত্রনাট্য প্রকাশ পাবে।
আচ্ছা।
কিন্তু দেখুন এখন কিন্তু এটা ট্রেন্ড হয়ে গেছে, দেশের মতো পত্রিকাতেও চিত্রনাট্য ছাপা হচ্ছে। কিন্তু তার সূত্রপাত করেছিলেন কিন্তু সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় এবং মানিকদার সঙ্গে জোর করে। তারপরে শাখা প্রশাখা যে ছবি হয়নি, তার একটা প্রাথমিক অংশ আর প্রথমাংশ একটা উনি লিখে রেখেছিলেন, সেইটা ছাপা হয়েছিল। তারপর তো অশনি সংকেত, অসংখ্য মানে 4-5টা ছবি বাদ দিয়ে সমস্ত চিত্রনাট্য ওখানে ছাপা হয়। আর একটা জিনিস, সত্যজিৎ রায় একটা খুব বিখ্যাত লেখা, সেটা হচ্ছে রবীন্দ্রসঙ্গীতের ওপর, যে রবীন্দ্রসঙ্গীতের গায়কই কিরম হবে, রবীন্দ্রসঙ্গীতের সঙ্গে আবহ সঙ্গীত কি থাকবে, কতটা থাকবে, এইসব নিয়ে একটা খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ লেখা, রবীন্দ্রসঙ্গীতে ভাববার কথা, দীর্ঘ একটা প্রবন্ধ সত্যজিৎ রায়, সেটা ওখানে বেরিয়েছিল। আর একটা জিনিস খুব ইন্টারেস্টিং, সেটা হচ্ছে যখন আওয়ার ফিল্ম দেয়ার ফিল্মস বেরোলো, বইটা বেরোলো সত্যজিৎ রায়ের, তখন তার ভূমিকাটা, একটা দীর্ঘ ভূমিকা, সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় কিন্তু নিজে বাংলায় অনুবাদ করে এক্ষণে ছাপেন।
সেটা একটা বিরাট,
খুব মানে বিরাট একটা মানে, এবং সেই লেখাটা পরে অনেক মানে কোথাও বেরোয়নি সেই বাংলা লেখাটা, পরে ওনার গদ্য সমগ্রতে দেওয়া হলো এবং আরো ছাপা হচ্ছে। এবং কমল কুমার মজুমদার, অন্তর্জলি যাত্রা, যার বিখ্যাত লেখা, এবং এই কমল কুমার মজুমদারকে চিনতই না যদি না এক্ষণ ওনার লেখা ছাপতো। সত্যজিৎ রায়ের খুব ঘনিষ্ঠ বন্ধু। ফলে এইটা আমাদের পৃথ্বী নিয়োগের সঙ্গে সত্যজিৎ রায়ের একটা কথোপকথন, সেটা ওখানে ছাপা হয়েছিল। আর একটা জিনিস হচ্ছে, দেখুন এরা পত্রিকাটা বার করেছিল তো নিজেদের লেখা ছাপবার জন্যে, এবং প্রথম দিকে কিন্তু এই বন্ধু বান্ধবদের অনেক কবিতা, এবং কবিতার ব্যাপারটা নির্মাল্যবাবু একদমই দেখতেন না, এবং ইনফ্যাক্ট নির্মাল্যবাবু কবিতা পছন্দ করতেন না একদম। কিন্তু সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় কিন্তু তার বন্ধু, তাদের প্রিয়জন যারা ছিলেন, যারা খুব ভালো কবিতা লিখতেন, তাদের কবিতা একের পর এক ছাপিয়ে গেছেন। আর একটা কি করেছেন, সেটা হচ্ছে নাটক। সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়ের অনেকগুলো নাটক, এবং বেশিরভাগই কিন্তু মানে অনুবাদ বলবো না। যেমন ধরুন কামুর ক্রস পারপাস, যেটা ভুল ছাপা হলো, ব্রেক্টের বিধি ও ব্যতিক্রম, যেটা ওর দি এক্সেপশন অফ অ্যান্ড দ্য রুল বলে যে বিখ্যাত নাটক, তার অনুবাদ। এবং এই যে নাটকগুলো ছাপা হচ্ছে, দেখুন সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় তখন একটা নাম, এবং ইচ্ছে করলেই উনি অন্য কাগজে দিয়ে অর্থ উপার্জন করতে পারতেন, কিন্তু তা নয়। এবং নিজের নাটক, নিজের পত্রিকাকে, যাতে পত্রিকার মান আরো বাড়ানো যায়, এবং সেই জন্য নিজের একের পর এক নাটক ছাপিয়ে গেছে, এবং প্রত্যেকটা নাটক ছাপাবার আগে লিখে উনি কিন্তু সত্যজিৎ রায়ের সঙ্গে পরামর্শ করতেন যে কতটা কি ভালো খারাপ হবে।
অ্যাবসলিউটলি, অ্যাবসলিউটলি।
এবং এবং আর একটা জিনিস আমি খুব অবাক হয়ে যাই, দেখুন সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায় 29টা নাটক লিখেছেন, 3 খণ্ডে তার নাট্য সমগ্র রয়েছে, এবং উনি বারবার বলছেন যে আমার কথা, আমি চাইতাম কি যে আমার যদি একজন নাট্যকার থাকতো, আমার ভাবনাগুলো নিয়ে কেউ যদি লিখতো, তাহলে আমি আর নাটক লিখতাম না।
সত্যি কথা।
বুঝতে পারছেন?
হ্যাঁ।
এবং 61 থেকে 79 এই 19 বছর উনি এই পত্রিকাটার সঙ্গে জড়িয়েছিলেন, এবং শুধু জড়িয়েছিলেন না, তার যে একটা সেলিব্রিটি, যে একটা পরিচয়, সেইটার কারণে উনি বিজ্ঞাপন পর্যন্ত জোগাড় করতেন বিভিন্ন অফিসে গিয়ে। একটা সময়, হ্যাঁ, ফলে এইটাও একটা দিক ওনার। হ্যাঁ,
নিশ্চয়ই। থ্যাংক ইউ সো মাচ। অনেক ধন্যবাদ তোমাকে এই মানে এই জায়গাগুলোকে দর্শকদের সামনে নিয়ে আসার জন্য, এক্ষণের সম্বন্ধে এত কিছু বলার জন্য, আর অনেক কিছু আমরা সমৃদ্ধ হলাম। অনেক ধন্যবাদ। হ্যাঁ,
আপনাদেরও
খুব ভালো থেকো আর সুস্থ থেকো। আর আমরা যেটা বললাম, মানে যে পলিম্যাথের যেটা লিটারারি ওয়ার্কস, এটা খুব সুন্দর করে আমরা ভালো থেকো দেবাশিস দা। হ্যাঁ
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, আপনারা খুব ভালো থেকো। নমস্কার। নমস্কার।
নমস্কার।
সুন্দর করে জানলাম এক্ষণের সম্বন্ধে। তো আমার মনে হয় সঙ্গীতাদি, আমরা অপর্ণা সেনের যেটা উনি যেটা পাঠিয়েছেন এই প্রসঙ্গে, আমরা সেই কবিতার প্রসঙ্গে চলে আসি, আর সেখান থেকে আমরা একদম শেষের দিকে চলে এসেছি। আমাদের অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকার জন্য। আমি অপর্ণা সেনের প্রথম এটা আপনাদের সঙ্গে শেয়ার করছি।
আমার জীবনের প্রথম নায়ক সৌমিত্র চট্টোপাধ্যায়। কোনোদিন ভাবিনি তার কোনো স্মরণ অনুষ্ঠানে যোগদান করতে হবে, কিন্তু তা হলো। সারা জীবন আমার মনে হয় উনি নিজেকে উজাড় করে দিয়েছেন। কিভাবে এত দিকে উনি মন দিতেন আমি জানি না। ছবি আঁকায়, গানে, কবিতায়, তারপর অভিনয় তো ছিলই, নাটক লেখা, নাটকে অভিনয় করা, সিনেমায় অভিনয় করা, এক্ষণ পত্রিকা সম্পাদনা করা একটা সময়, মানে, এবং সমস্তক্ষণ সাহিত্য চর্চা, সাহিত্য পড়া, সব কিছু, তার মধ্যে আড্ডা, হাসি, আলোচনা, সব কিছুই চলতো একসঙ্গে। তো আমার মনে হতো কে ওকে তাড়িয়ে বেড়ায় যেন, কে যেন ওকে তাড়িয়ে বেড়ায়। মানে নিজেকে একেবারে এইভাবে উজাড় করে ঢেলে দেয়া তাদেরই পক্ষে সম্ভব যাদের মনের মধ্যে কেউ যেন থাকে যারা তাকে তাড়িয়ে বেড়ায়। তো সেই কারণেই আমার মনে হলো আজকে আমি একটা কবিতা পড়ি, সেটা ওর উদ্দেশ্যে পড়া, বলা যেতে পারে সেটাই আমার তর্পণ। কবিতাটির নাম জীবন দেবতা। ওহে অন্তরতম, মিটেছে কি তব সকল তিয়াস, আসি অন্তরে মম, দুঃখ সুখের লক্ষ্য ধারায় পাত্র ভরিয়া দিয়েছি তোমায়, নিঠুর পীড়নে নিঙারি বক্ষ দলিত দ্রাক্ষা সম। কত যে বরণ, কত যে গন্ধ, কত যে রাগিনী, কত যে ছন্দ, গাঁথিয়া গাঁথিয়া করেছি বয়ন, বাসর শয়ন তব। গলায় গলায় বাসনার সোনা, প্রতিদিন আমি করেছি রচনা, তোমার ক্ষণিক খেলার লাগিয়া মূরতি নিত্য নব। আপনি বরিয়া লয়েছিলে মোরে, না জানি কিসের আসে, লেগেছে কি ভালো হে জীবননাথ, আমার রজনী, আমার প্রভাত, আমার নর্ম, আমার কর্ম তোমার বিজনবাসে। বরষা শরতে, বসন্তে শীতে, ধ্বনি আছে হিয়া যত সঙ্গীতে, শুনেছ কি তাহা একলা বসিয়া আপন সিংহাসনে। মানুষ কুসুম তুলি অঞ্চলে গেঁথেছ কি মালা, পরেছ কি গলে, আপনার মনে করেছ ভ্রমণ মম যৌবন বনে। কি দেখিছ বধূ মরম মাঝারে রাখিয়া নয়ন দুটি, করেছ কি ক্ষমা যতেক আমার স্খলন পতন ত্রুটি। পূজাহীন দিন সেবাহীন রাত, কত বার বার ফিরে গেছে নাথ। অর্ঘ কুসুম ঝরে পড়ে গেছে বিজন বিপিনে ফুটি। যে সুরে বাঁধিলে এ বিনার তার, নামিয়া নামিয়া গেছে বার বার। হে কবি তোমার রচিত রাগিনী আমি কি গাহিতে পারি? তোমার কাননে সেচিবারে গিয়া ঘুমায় পড়েছি ছায়ায় পড়িয়া। সন্ধ্যাবেলায় নয়ন ভরিয়া এনেছি অশ্রুবারি। এখন কি শেষ হয়েছে প্রাণেশ যা কিছু আছিল মোর? যত শোভা যত গান যত প্রাণ জাগরণ ঘুমঘোর, শিথিল হয়েছে বাহুবন্ধন মদিরাবিহীন মম চুম্বন। জীবন কুঞ্জে অভিসার নিশা আজি কি হয়েছে ভোর? ভেঙে দাও তবে আজিকার সভা, আনো নব রূপ আনো নব শোভা। নূতন করিয়া লহ আর বার চির পুরাতন মোরে। নূতন বিবাহে বাঁধিবে আমায় নবীন জীবন ডোরে। সত্যি আবার উনি হয়তো অন্য কোনো রূপে আমাদের মধ্যে ফিরে আসবেন। তখন তার জীবন দেবতা আবার তাকে বাঁধবেন নতুন বন্ধনে নতুন বিবাহ ডোরে। সেটাই আমরা আশা করব যে ওর মতন আরেকজন মানুষকে আমরা পাবো আবার, বারবার যে ওকে মনে পড়িয়ে দেবে। আজ আসি, আমি আজকে থাকতে পারলাম না লাইভ এই সভায়, তার কারণ আমি কলকাতায় নেই। আমি যেখানে আছি সেখানে।
অনেক ধন্যবাদ আপনাদেরকে এমন সুন্দর করে একটা কবিতা এবং পুরনো যেটা নতুন একটা ভাইব নিয়ে আসে, নতুন একটা পজিটিভিটি নিয়ে আসে। সঙ্গীতা দি, আমরা সবার কাছে খুবই কৃতজ্ঞ। আমরা ভোট অফ থ্যাঙ্কস এর দিকে যাচ্ছি এবং লাস্টে আমাদের একটা সৌমিত্র ট্রিবিউট দিয়ে আমরা শেষ করতে চলেছি। সঙ্গীতা দি।
Thank you, listeners, for being with us. This has, as I had anticipated, and I was trying that this shouldn't happen, but we really have gone beyond 3 hours. It's been enriching, it's been inspiring, it's been very emotionally touching that so many people very spontaneously wanted to share so many memories with us. So thank you to all the panelists. With that very beautiful poem that Aparna read for us, I think it's an appropriate moment to draw this session to a close, to say thank you to all our partners, to say thank you to you, audience, who have been with us and shared this wonderful session of tributes to, as I said, a giant in the firmament of the Bengali culture. In one of the pieces that I wrote after his passing, I wrote that he was that colossus who was also an everyman, a giant figure who still was so approachable and whom we could reach out to and touch. So with our greatest respects to Soumitra Da, with great humility, we acknowledge the legacy that he has left behind for all of us to take forward. I really hope that the young people listening today will go back and rediscover his films and his writing and his poetry, and we will be able to come back to you with many more such sessions later. Thank you, my co-host Anirban. It's been a week of very feverish activity, but I'm so thankful that we've put all this together. I'd like to thank the panelists again. And so thank you very much, Sharmila Thakur. Thank you, Aparna Sen. Thank you, Amish Tripathi, Director, Nehru Center. Thank you, Paulami Bose, Soumitra's daughter, who was here with us talking about her theatrical experience with her father. Thank you, Gautam Ghosh. Thank you to Rachel Dwyer, Professor Emerita SOAS. Thank you to Farrukh Dhondy, who talked about this really, really significant transition to television and making Satyajit Ray and Soumitra approachable to the diaspora audience here. Thank you to Suman Mukhopadyay, to Suman Ghosh, to Atanu Ghosh, to Debashis Mukhopadyay, and to Sri Jato. These were all the panelists with us today.
Also to Debanjan Chakrabarti of British Council.
Debanjan Chakrabarti, who was
many thanks for joining from Kolkata. And also to the full Baithak UK team with the Jannavi Banerjee, Chandana Shannal, Jonaki Chandra, Bindia Malhotra, and Shubhalakshmi Mukherjee. And to the Essex
before I go to the Essex team, I'd just like to thank Kallal Chakrabarti and Shubhajit Prasad, who also did our editing. And in the Essex Indian team, we'd like to thank Dr. Orpita Rai, Dr. Dipankar Mukherjee, Mr. Upal Banerjee, Mr. Biplab Rokhit.
And there's the trustees of Essex Indians, and also our editor from Astral Studios and Boishali Bagchi, who kindly did all the small clips and the Soumitra tribute. So from behalf of Baithak UK and Essex Indians, from Shongita Di and myself, thank you very much for being with us. It has been a learning experience, educational experience, emotional experience. We have been slightly, over time, but I believe that's from the emotions. Everyone, Sharmila Thakur and Sharmila did talk for about half an hour, with so nice emotions, which I believe everyone enjoyed and everyone has taken the learning lessons from there. So that was really, really experience for all of us.
The good thing is that this is archived, Anirban. So if people have
absolutely
left at some point, this wonderful archive is here for you to stay. And the most important thing is that these sort of sessions then become almost reference material for people to come back to later on. So
I think so. Yeah, lovely. So thank you very much, and for being with us. We are just finishing in this note with this, very small 3 minutes tribute. But obviously, thanks very much from all of us.
Thank you. So this is farewell from Shongita, from Anirban, and come back and enjoy more sessions with us.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
we'll continue this. That's the most important thing for our generation next and the generation next of culture globally. Thank you.
পুলু, কেমন আছিস? ভালো? বড় তাড়াতাড়ি নিভে যাচ্ছে এই কলমের আলো। মাঘ কুয়াশার চেয়েও ঝাপসা হচ্ছে অক্ষর। কোথা দিয়ে কেটে গেল রে এতগুলো বছর? যেন রেলের চাকায় বেঁধেছিল কেউ দিন ঘড়িটার কাঁটা। অনেক কষ্টে জোগাড় করেছি তোর ঠিকানাটা। এই দেখ, পরিচয়টাই দেওয়া হয়নি কথায় কথায়। চিনতে পারছিস? রোল 46, অপূর্ব কুমার রায়।
তুমি কে?
তোমার বন্ধু। আমি হয় এর বদলা নেব, না হয় গোয়েন্দাগিরি ছেড়ে দেব। আপনার না আরেকটু কেয়ারফুল হওয়া উচিত ছিল। হ্যাঁ, রাগ আমি করেছিলাম, কিন্তু বাড়ি গিয়ে মনে হলো আপনি বোধহয় ইচ্ছে করে আমায় রাগাচ্ছিলেন।
আমার সম্বন্ধে আপনার ধারণা দেখছি একেবারেই
নির্ভুল। বুড়ো বয়সে তুমি একটা ছুকরিকে নিয়ে চলে যাবে আর আমি জোয়ান মদ্য হয়ে তাই দাঁড়িয়ে দাঁড়িয়ে দেখবো? পথ ছাড়বে কি না? নিশ্চয়ই ছাড়বো। তার আগে একবার তোমার পেয়ারিকে। ভালো কথা। তোমার শঙ্কর সিং এর খবর কি? অভিষেক ঠিক সময় হচ্ছে তো? দেখো আবার যেন না পালায়। বান্দার বাচ্চা, বেয়াদব শয়তান। কেশবদা, লোকটি কি? উদিতের ইয়ার ময়ূর বাহন। ওর মতো বদমাশ এ রাজ্যে আর দুটো নেই। কিন্তু কি সুন্দর চেহারা। সত্যি বাবু ময়ূর বাহন।
জীবনে কি পাবো না, ভুলেছি
সে ভাবনা, সামনে যা দেখি জানি না সে কি আসল কি নকল সোনা।
কাল রাতে চিরু যখন চৌধুরী মশাইকে অমন করে অপমান করলে, তখন তো কেউ ব্যাঙের লাঠির কথা ভাবেননি, নাকি ওর টাকা আছে বলে? এই যা, তোদের ছুটি।
তুমি তো ভয়ঙ্কর রকমের হিন্দি বলছো।
কেন, ও তো ঘাড় নাড়লো, সব বুঝেছি।
না,
বুঝিনি,
কিচ্ছু বুঝিনি। টুকুন, জল থেকে তাহলে উঠে এলি?
6:45। এখনো আলো আছে?
হ্যাঁ।
কোথায় ছিলাম জানিস? ওইখানে, ওই জলের নিচে। আর বলছিলাম, পারে, মানুষ সব পারে, ঠিক মতো সুযোগ পেলে সব কিছু পারে। বলছিলাম ফাইট, কোনি ফাইট।
গোপন বলতে নিজের কাছে একটা নাম রাখবো শুধু, একটা নাম রাখবো শুধু। পিতা নয়, লেখক নয়, স্বার্থ নয়, শুধু বন্ধু। চললাম পুলু, জানাবো তোকে কি দেখলাম ছেঁড়া পাতায়। ভালো থাকিস, বইটা ছাপিস। ইতি অপু, অপূর্ব রায়।